Welcome to the latest podcast from the Casual Gamers Project. My name is Diggs and I'm joined by my usual crew of Peter and Stevo. On our last episode we discussed video game magazines and the huge impact they had on us back in a time before the internet was the go-to source. Check that out if you haven't already done so. So today's topic is video games purchasing. Whether you're a casual gamer like us or a hardcore enthusiast, join us as we discuss what makes us add to our already overflowing game library. So let's get started. Okay lads, so back in the day, right, we can all say that we started on the 8-bit era. So I think, in terms of back then, we're talking like what, late 80s, early 90s type era?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were all kids, so our only kind of video game library back then was whatever was bought for us when we had to settle for, Yeah, there was just, I would safely say that most games were purchased on a budget back then. There was no new releases bought or anything like that. So I would imagine back in that era, we were kind of just like you played what you were given, and you had to enjoy it whether it was a terrible game or an excellent game. It didn't matter. It just you had to just stick with it, right? Would you agree?
Yeah,
I'd agree. Yeah. That made it more fun because you knew then the next one it could be, if you're lucky, a birthday, or if not, it's once a year, Christmas, and that'd be it.
Yeah, that's exactly it, isn't it? Christmas and birthdays, or maybe if somebody had a Holy Communion or a confirmation, something like that.
Too,
yeah, that was game purchase. Like, obviously, we would have probably played mates games. They'd come over and stay over in your house and they'd bring their games with you. And that was another way of playing, but you never really... Well, I guess it was preemptive to a purchase, I guess. If you played your friend's game and you really liked it, well, then it would be like, right, on my next birthday or Christmas, I'm getting that game.
Yeah. You just think about you say like Christmas and say the odd birthday or communion confirmation. Even if the game you didn't like it and you played it and completed or you didn't, there was always the option there, because we knew other people or friends had, say, Master Systems or whatever. Swap.
Yeah. That was it. Yeah, swap. Yeah, swap, it was a big thing. I tell you what, like, there used to be, there was a magazine in Ireland. It's sort of, the way we have the website now, Done Deal.
Yeah.
It was sort of like that, but in paper, there was a magazine. I can't think of what it was called.
I think I know what you're talking about.
It came out every week, and people would put an ad in it saying, say for example, I had Toka Touring Cars on PS1. I'd put an ad in there saying Toka Touring Cars for swap, looking for Mortal Kombat Trilogy or Resident Evil 1 or something like that.
Was it the buy and sell?
No, you're 100%
That's it.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, the buy and sell.
You're 100% right, yeah.
I knew you wouldn't let us down, Peter. The fountain of knowledge.
Yeah. Good memory.
But, yeah, that was good. Like, and I remember, I'll never forget one time I swapped the game. I can't remember what it was, but you know me, I used to, like, my games were kept in pristine condition.
Yeah. Yes.
I nearly used to rub the Mr. Sheen, is that what you call it, and and clean all my game cases and everything. And pledge, yeah, exactly that. And they were pristine. And I remember being very particular about this first swap that I'd done on buy and sell. And it was a guy in Sligo, I think, or Galway. And we decided to swap games, and I think the terms were whoever placed the ad sent their game first. So I placed the ad and I sent my game, wiped it all down, got it lovely. It was sparkling clean. It was almost like brand new. Then I got his in the post like a couple of days later, and it was in bits.
Yeah,
absolutely. The CD, it was a PlayStation 1 game, and the CD was terrible. I was like, wow.
Did it work?
It worked, yeah, but like it really annoyed me.
Yeah,
anyway, that's a bit off topic, but yeah, I had to get that off my chest.
we would have been the same, because like, even though there was 5 of us growing up, I found that was one of the things we definitely did, because we definitely looked after our games, because again, we didn't get them that often like yourself, but we knew there's something went wrong. Yeah, because that's it. And the thing is, if we broke something, you weren't getting another one. That was it. We're done.
Yeah.
So
So I think it's safe to say, isn't it, that when we were at that age, that 8-bit and 16-bit era, I think a lot of word of mouth was the reason why we got certain games. So if you played a mate's game, or the schoolyard talk was about a particular game, and I'll give you one example: Streets of Rage 2.
Yeah.
I by chance one night met a friend on the street, and he said, "You got any games to swap for a night or two?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know, like, what have you got?" And he said, "I got this game, Streets of Rage 2. It's awesome." And I was like, I don't know, I never heard of that game. What's it about? And he said, it's just like you go around you play as these characters called Axel and Skate and Blaze and can't think of the last guy, the wrestler. But anyway, and it was just at that time, I was like, I took a chance. I said, right, okay, here's my game. I can't remember what it was. And I remember taking home Streets of Rage 2 and just being completely blown away by that game. I've been like, wow.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like I remember I just had to go and buy the game then eventually, months later. But that was because I just by chance got a lend of it off a friend. We swapped games for the night, and that was it. Fell in love with it straight away. So that was my reasoning for that game. That purchase.
That was the first time I ever played Streets of Rage 2 was when you got a loan of it that time as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I went over to your house that evening and you were playing it, and it was just like, oh my god, couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Wasn't it just incredible?
Ah.
It's not like it's such a simplistic game, like, and it was 2-player, right?
Yeah.
You can only 2 characters on the screen. Yeah. And it was so well done, and it was like that era of like your objective was move left to right, but it was sort of like what was cool about it wasn't just left to right, but it felt like there was an isometric kind of viewpoint as well.
There was different elements to it.
Yeah, that was an incredible game, man.
The music,
the one that the music.
Oh, it's still for me one of the greatest soundtracks ever in video games. I can't,
absolutely.
I still listen to it every so often because it's just so
me too. Yeah,
good.
YouTube.
Yeah. I still listen to it. It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the best soundtracks.
Yeah, ever.
So yeah, that was my story about Street of Rage. Have you anything from that era that say your first time playing it turned into like a massive hit for you? And,
when you're touching on say games there, like there was we didn't get the Master System until one of our brothers. It was his communion. Now I played the Master System a few years because friends at school. You had the Mega Drive, but I remember like you said there. The only time we really got games was, say, maybe at Christmas or, say, and that's the thing with Christmas, you never knew what you were getting. It was it was a lucky dip basically.
And, you could ask for something, but you just didn't know.
Yeah, you didn't know what you were getting. But I suppose that was the fun of it. But the games you often got,
unless you had, I can't remember who it was in your house. Used to sneak around looking for the hidden presents.
Oh, I know exactly that was.
Yeah, and then suddenly it wasn't a surprise anymore.
Yeah, that wasn't me, was it?
No, I don't think so. No. We won't mention names, but I think me and Steve will know who.
I did that when I was 15 with the PlayStation.
Of course you did.
Yeah. But
You can't put a Christmas tree.
I did. I should have set up a tent.
It was like a protest.
Oh yeah. But I do remember vividly 2 Christmases. Well, actually, no, 3. There was one in particular. I was 11. It was about a year after we got the Master System, and I remember getting Space Harrier for Christmas. That was the year we actually got our first ever TV, and we had it up in our room, like in mine and the boys' room. Steve-O was in the box room with one of the other boys, and I remember getting Space Harrier, and I liked it, but I was like, this is ridiculous in terms of like how hard it was. But again, me being me, I just stuck with it. Yeah.
No, that's the play.
It still took me years. Like
one or two other.
I think I was saying in a previous video that it took me years to figure out. Like there was cheat codes for the game. I think it wasn't until I was in secondary school when I got a loan of a magazine off one of the guys, and I found out that there was actually cheats for additional continues. And I was like, oh my god, I'd have known that if I would have completed the game sooner. But anywho, the next one was I think it was about a year later. It was like a space kind of rail shooter kind of thing. It was it Xenon 2? Almost a little bit like R-Type, but it was like a top-down kind of vertical scrolling shooter. And again, I enjoyed that. It was tough, but it was very slow. It was the frame rate was very sluggish and choppy. But I played it. It took a while, but I finished it. It wasn't as long as Space Harrier, but yeah, I finished it. But then I remember when I was it 12 or 13? I was 13, I think. And one of the other boys, we'd actually gotten a second Master System. And it was, because the other one was nearly, I think the one was on its way out, but we ended up getting another one anyway, but this one was an older one, but it had Alice Kid in Miracle World. Now I'd only played that briefly beforehand, like years gone by, through one of my mum's friends that she used to know, like, and they had a Master System, I do remember, in their kitchen, but we never had actually properly played it until that time that we got it ourselves. And one of the younger brothers got the Master System for that Christmas, and sure, we were as addicted to it as well, because I remember you came over and sure you were playing it as much as the rest of us with Alice Kid, like, because we couldn't stop playing that game. It was so good.
I loved it.
That was definitely for me. If I of all of the games, that was definitely the best of the hidden gems, really, because you didn't expect it, but it ended up being the best game of the bunch. That kind of way.
Yeah, I had played it previously in another mate's house.
Yeah,
and I just fell in love with it. I would actually say I enjoyed Alice Kid more than Mario Brothers.
Yeah. I just because it had so many different
controversial,
but it had so many different nuances. It took a lot from Mario Brothers with the platforming, but it added in all the different puzzles and bits. But if I do quickly, just before I finish up, just going back to with certain games, there was certain points when you would save up and you were allowed to buy a game, say at a certain point, maybe for your birthday, or if you had a bit of pocket money, which wouldn't be often, or say, or one of the boys' communion or confirmation would come up, I remember when I was 12, I went in, and funny enough, the local, it's not there anymore, but the Toy Master store that used to be in town where we live, they would stock Master System games, and it was one of the few places around where we lived that actually had a good selection. Now, there wasn't a massive selection, but they always had like good games. You know, like I remember buying Streets of Rage 2 out of there on the Master System, which was, you know, you'd never think or hear of, like, and I think I remember bought it for like, was it £20 or something at the time, which at the time you'd think to yourself, oh, that's a steal, but now it's like going for, I remember selling it years ago, and now it's worth like a couple of $100. Like, it's insane what it's going for these days. But on this particular day, it was my confirmation when I was 12, and I bought 2 games, and I bought, was it Captain Silver? You were kind of like a pirate trying to steal treasure. It was good, but it wasn't as good as the next game I bought, which was like a ninja kind of like samurai type game. It's called Ken Seiden, and it was like a vertical kind of like action adventure game. But what was cool, it had RPG elements because you had to defeat bosses, and you would do like hidden stages where you had to do like trials trying to avoid obstacles and darts and arrows being thrown at you, and you had to deflect them and stuff to get to the end. And you get these scrolls and you get these upgrades that would upgrade your abilities, where you could jump higher, you could use better moves with your sword, even have stronger swords, so you do more damage to enemies and stuff. That game for me is one of the best games I've ever played on the Master System, and it was one game. And it looks really cool as well. And you can travel to different zones at different stages. So if you miss something, you can always go back to it once you're strong enough. You know, that kind of, once you've leveled up. That for me, without a doubt, is definitely, I would put him one of my top 5 games, or if not top 3 games that I've ever played in the Master System. That game is incredible.
Yeah, that what you just said there about going backtracking.
Yeah.
To different, like, that's incredible actually, because
it was way
my
ahead of
first
its time.
experience of that. Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. It's way ahead of its time, because I remember, like, wasn't it Mario Brothers 3? You could go back. You had like a world map type thing, and you could go back and replay levels and stuff like that. That was, you know,
to get bits that you missed out on previously. Yeah,
I think, yeah, I hope I'm right in saying that, but I vaguely remember having that kind of world map where you could like move the character about on and go back. Yeah, that really was ahead of its time then. And yeah, I vaguely remember that game, Ken Seiden.
It goes even to the point as well. It was one of those games you knew just by looking at even the front cover. It's like, this looks like something really cool, and you look at the back cover. And for me, it was usually always a case of the images or the gameplay footage that you see in the back. Usually, what sold me on the game. And once I seen it, I was like, yeah, this looks cool. This looks really cool. Even I remember getting for my 10th birthday, we had my long after getting the Master System, and I got to remember the Ninja. And that used to drive me mad, but it had a cool feature at the end of it, because there was a hidden secret that you needed to do in order to actually finish the game outright. If you didn't, the game would just keep replaying. You had to find like 5 hidden scrolls, but then there was a puzzle on like the 10th level where you had to do like a certain sequence of throwing ninja stars at a certain sculpture, and then it would open up a hidden passage that you could go in, and if you finish that, then you would get the real ending of the story and finish the game. So there was a lot of really cool hidden like, features and stuff in it. But again, it took me ages to find that out. There was actually one of the lads in school that actually came over and showed me what to do.
Yeah. But that's before the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
Only stores.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, actually. Yeah. What about you, Steve? Like, can you remember one of your earliest purchases?
My sort of system as such, maybe it's not as much. I didn't really buy games for the Master System.
It was Peter buying them all.
Yeah.
It usually was, yeah.
I think the brothers bought a couple as well, and I just play along with them, you know. But
yeah. Well, what was the first console you ever bought, Steve-O? Was it the N64?
N64 was the first one I bought.
And what did you... I know you and I both got the N64 at the same time, so I know we both got GoldenEye.
Yeah.
You got Ocarina of Time, wasn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Yes. So what drove you to buy that game? What did you do, a bit of research, or was it just a spur of the moment thing?
To tell you the truth, I liked the Zeldas, alright, but obviously not as much as you bought it, but I was looking, say, game magazines, and they were ranting and raving about this game, and I said, you know what, I'll definitely give it a go. I said, obviously then when I was getting the N64, I could not but get it, do you know what I mean? I had to get it.
Yeah, of course.
And I was not disappointed.
No. And you know, it's funny that at the time, I remember seeing you playing it, and I was thinking, that's not my kind of jam. There's no fatalities in that. It's not Mortal Kombat. You know, like that's very narrow-minded back then.
There's no zombies' heads exploding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but I can acknowledge that years down the line, I was like, that game was absolutely amazing.
It was outstanding. It really was. And to this day, it still holds a place right up there with the greatest games ever made.
And you know, speaking of that, both of us we got our N64s at the same time. Yeah. And both of us got GoldenEye, and I think, if I remember correctly, I just had word of mouth about that game, and then I got it, and I was like, holy shit, this is one of the most amazing games I've ever played.
Yeah.
And that was just like, even to this day, that GoldenEye game is just still stands out. Absolutely incredible.
I love
remember
that game.
playing the deathmatch. Was it 4?
You can play 4 player, yeah. You can play 4 player, yeah.
That's nuts, isn't it?
Four player.
Yeah, on what, a little 14-inch
TV, yeah.
TV. Oh my! How did we do that? And yeah, we're complaining if we don't have a 55-inch TV.
I know,
there.
yeah. So we can't play our games. It's mental.
Spoiled, right? That's what we are. Yeah, but yeah, that's cool. Like GoldenEye, I remember playing GoldenEye, and it was so like authentic in terms it followed the movie and just the shooting mechanics in that game. It had the music. Yeah,
I loved
it was so good. Yeah.
I can even remember yourself, like I think as a 2 controllers, you take your 2 over to mine, and we'd all play 4 player, as you said, and with this really small screen.
Yeah. Yeah, because you were the same, right? You had a little 14-inch TV in your room. So that's mad. When you think about the old days in your house, so you had your bedroom with a 14-inch TV, and Peter had his with the 14-inch TV. It was like a little gaming hub at your house.
Always, yeah.
Yeah.
Because what ended up happening was, because there were so many of us, you'd nearly always bounce from one room to the other when you were bored of playing at one straight away. I would go into Steve's room, play the N64, and then we'd back to the PlayStation again. And
that's exactly, yeah.
And then when Steve got the Dreamcast later on, the same thing was happening. You were bouncing from one to the other.
Or in our case, not Peter's. It was like Peter's hogging the Master System in that room. I'll go into Steve and see what crack is there.
Yeah.
One more game.
Nobody usually when I was playing, nobody got a game. Yeah, so.
And that was every console.
Yeah, that was every console. Literally, that's why you wouldn't let me play the N64.
What else did you have, Steve, on the N64? If I remember correctly,
I didn't have that many games. Basically, Zelda, GoldenEye, and then I had Formula 1. There was one another one called, it was a Quest, and it's kind of like an RPG, and that was one now I didn't really do any research about it, because
that was a spur of the moment.
Yeah, playing Final Fantasy, and it says, oh, an RPG. I said, I'll give this a go now. It wasn't the best, you know what I mean? It was hard to control, but the elements were decent, but it just wouldn't have been now one of my top games. But just, I said, you don't know until you try.
That's it. It just wouldn't have captured your attention the same way that Final Fantasy 7 or Zelda Ocarina of Time would have done.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
But it was fully 3D, right?
Yeah.
Like Zelda.
Like Zelda, yeah.
Yeah. And it just didn't hit the heights of Zelda.
Just didn't do it for me,
Right.
And maybe I kind of expected too much because it seemed like with Zelda and the whole lot, but...
And did you buy that? Was that bought with the console, or did you get that at a later stage?
No, I bought that at a later stage.
Right, and that was sort of a spur of the moment thing, right?
That's exactly it, yeah.
So
just
ended up
go
kind
shopping
of being...
and I seen it. Don't like we go to Dublin.
Yeah.
Just seen it.
Yeah, that's how it was. Yeah, I mean, I would say, I don't know if you agree with me, but back then on those consoles, there was a lot of that. Like, let's buy it and see if it's any good.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it was a hit, sometimes it was a miss, and more times than not it was a miss.
Yeah.
Do you think about it when we did go to Dublin, like when you had HMV verbs, like Transport Tick and the whole lot, Smiths, the variety, the choice you had, you didn't know what you wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's true. Like you'd be standing there for an hour in the store.
I'll give this a go, or I'll give that a go. No, maybe I'll give this one a go. Oh no, maybe I'll give that one a go.
And all you had to go on was the cover, the case, looking at the pictures on the back, reading about the game. Yeah. That was it. You know, that's literally it back then.
All we had.
Was it? Just when I'm thinking there's one game that literally just popped into my head there. Just when we were talking about, say, I used to go to Dublin and stuff. There was times, I think you were with us a few times, Dig, where we used to go to, there was, when you come out of Connolly Station, and when you're going up to like O'Connell Street and stuff like that, that street going down there used to go underneath the train, like underneath the tunnel, like in the bridge, and there used to be a couple of old like shops there, and they look run down from the outside, but when you go in, like they were tiny, but they were actually like second-hand shops.
I noticed what you're talking about.
Yeah, and there was one or two, and there was one that we used to always go into, because I remember our dad took us into it a couple of times, because it was about the only time you could afford to get something, because obviously you had to get a second-hand because you couldn't afford to pay like full price for it. So, and it was actually him that put us onto it, because he found stuff in it there that was actually good, reasonable price, and stuff was, fairly looked after, like. But I do remember going in there, say, when I was 18, I went and bought Overblood for the PlayStation 1, and I remember getting, now I didn't have the case of it, but it was Streets of Rage 2, because I remember that time I bought like a Mega Drive, I bought one cheap a couple of months beforehand, and that was awesome. But I do remember, not too long before that, we actually did go to Dublin. There was a few of us that were there. I don't know if you were there that time. You might have been, but I remember one of the younger fellas was there, one of the younger brothers. And I remember going into another shop that was literally only a few doors up from that shop that we did go into. and I remember buying Actual Soccer 2 in it, a really good second-hand copy of it, and it was down to like £25 Irish pound time. Now the game hadn't been out overly long. In fairness, it hadn't, because it was relatively new. It had only been out about maybe 2 or 3 months, but the game was in really good condition, and I thought it was really cool. And I loved Actual Soccer 2 until wasn't until I played likes of FIFA and ISIS Pro. That was, you know, the games took away from it. But in the shop, there was also a Master System game there, as we all know that you played it as well. My younger brother wanted to buy it. I think it was £25 as well, and he didn't have enough money. I think he only had like about £15 or something like that left, but he was desperate. He wanted to buy it. When he seen it, he's like, oh, I want to buy this, because it reminded him of Zelda. So I was like, right, I'll give you the money towards it. So I ended up chipping in with him, and I gave him the money needed to buy it, and it ended up being Golden Axe Warrior. And I will admit, it was the one game that actually took me back to playing, that took me away from playing the PlayStation at all for any length of period of time, where I went back to the Master System and I played, like my brother, played Golden Axe Warrior for months. I mean, because it was so like the original, like the old school Zeldas on the Nintendo or Super Nintendo. That game was incredible. Easily.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because we know Gold.
Yeah, on the Master System.
We know Golden Axe from the side scroller Streets of Rage, but this was more of a Zelda type game, right?
Zelda's like a Zelda clone, but it was so bloody good.
Do you know what? Do you see those graphics, like those old Zelda games and things like that, and you have those pixel graphics of, you know, trees and buildings, and they had the like fence rails and stuff. There's something so intriguing about those games back then.
Yeah,
they're just, I think visually they just draw you in, and it's such basic graphics, but it's amazing. And as you said, like the gameplay itself then was amazing.
And the funny thing is, I remember like when I was in my younger years, when we were kind of in the early days of getting the Master System, you used to always get these wee kind of like leaflets that had like images or screenshots of some other games that were being released by Sega at the time for the Master System. It was like a kind of like a games catalogue kind of thing. Yeah. And I do remember they'd always have like a cover of the game case from the front, and then they'd always maybe show maybe 1 or 2 images of the actual gameplay itself. And I remember I used to sit and study them for hours, just looking over the images, taking everything in. And I do vaguely remember Golden Axe being on one of the catalogues. So then when I seen it, I instantly recognised it, but I didn't realise how good of a game it was going to be, you know. And then I ended up we played it, myself and my brother, because you were able to save like different save files. So he had one save file, I had one, and the two of us played the hell out of that game. I mean, I kid you not, like to a point, because I love the exploration. There was loads of hidden secrets. There was so much. Well, we played that for hundreds of hours each. Like, I kid you not. It was just insane how good that game is.
But you know what the cool thing about that was just, you took a punt, right?
Yeah.
You were in a store and you took a punt on it, and it turned out to be an absolutely massive hit.
One of the best games I've ever played.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love when you find something randomly and it just turns out to be amazing. You're just like, wow.
Yeah. That is for me, there's one of the best memories I've ever had with a game. Yeah. It's
you know, like, I guess moving on, for me anyway, like moving on to like say the PS1 games, like you're gonna like this, Peter, Exhumed.
I bought the updated remastered one there a couple of months ago. I got cheap on the PS Store. I had to get it because that's my favourite FPS game on the PS1.
Well, I just my kind of like reason for purchasing that game was I went to school with a guy who was a big gamer just like me, and he told me about it. He says it's an FPS game. It's not like Doom. He says you can move on the verticals, so you can like shoot upwards and shoot downwards and things like that. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm interested now. It's set in ancient Egypt, and I was like, this sounds really cool, you know, like, and he kept going on about it. Like, he was just as enthusiastic about it, you know, how we were about Resident Evil.
Yeah.
And he was very enthusiastic about it, and I said, right, okay, if I see it going cheap, and we, you know, like all our other stories, we were in Dublin after Christmas one year, or was it during the summer? No, it was during the summer.
It was during the summer, yeah, because you came up with us on the train that day, yeah.
Yeah, and we went into, you know, the shopping centre. It's not the Jervis shopping centre.
Ilac Centre.
Oh, sorry, I did the other way around. It's not the Alex Centre, it's the Jervis
Centre.
And there was, do you remember the store, Dixon's electronics store?
Yeah.
It was in there. And I got it for £20 at the time, which is an absolute bargain back then. And I got it, and we were just, remember, like, I don't even think I played that game in my own home.
I do remember. We
just spent the summer in your house playing it there.
Just to cut across you there, just when I'm thinking of it, I do remember you when you bought that game, because we were with our parents were with us as well. I remember. Yeah. Was that also the day that our brother, the younger fella, stopped the train? He pushed the button by accident.
He had his Dougal moment.
I think that was the same day. That was hilarious. Priceless.
It's not that he stopped the train. He hit the emergency button in the toilet
after being told not to press it, and he still did it anyway. He stopped the train.
No, It wasn't even about the button. Your father said to him, "Don't hit any buttons in there."
More beforehand.
Only for our dad worked on Irish Rail, and he knew the lad that was the security guard. Only for that we would have got in serious trouble.
And he come out, did one of you hit the button in the toilet? No.
Yeah.
And your man's there sweating bullets, and he sat down and he's rubbing his knees, and they're like, "Did you hit the button?" Yeah.
What age would he have been? He's only about 8 or 9 at the time. That's all he would have been.
It was a proper. You remember Dougal and Father?
Yeah.
Don't hit the emergency button.
That was hilarious. But I do remember. We went after you bought that game. We went into a small cafe, and we were sitting there and we were getting something to eat. I think we got sandwiches or chips or something like that. And I remember we were kind of going over stuff that we had bought. We took stuff out. We were looking and we were showing each other what we got and that. And you were showing us these. I remember you distinctly looking at that case, and you would not let that go. You were like, "Yeah."
But that was my favourite thing.
You were glued.
Buying a new game.
Yeah.
You know what pisses me off about modern day games? You don't get the little booklet anymore inside.
No,
you
don't.
No.
It's like that was part of the whole appeal of, you buy this game, you'd look at the front cover, the back cover, you'd open it up, you'd look at the booklet on the inside, you'd read it back to front. It was all about, the experience, but now they don't even put the booklets in. You buy a physical game now, you get a leaflet on the inside with a DLC code to a jacket that you don't want to wear. It's some rubbish like that.
Yeah.
But I miss that. I miss that feeling of buying something you felt like you were getting this game's going to be amazing. It could be the worst game you've ever played in your life, but it doesn't matter. The build up to playing it was amazing.
I was the same. I used to study the manuals you get with it. I read them the back from cover to cover,
Yeah. You'd almost be disappointed there were 7 different languages. I was hoping that the whole thing would be in English.
Yeah.
20 pages to read.
Yeah.
But Exhumed was probably the first. For me, it was word of mouth. But I took the chance. I took a punt on it, and I said, "I'll buy this and see if it's as good as people say." And I was not disappointed. That's a successful one. I'm trying to think of back then on PS1. I bought into hype. When we think about why we buy games, you got the magazines. You'd see a preview of a game. You were like, "Oh, this is going to be amazing." And do you remember G Police on PS1? I had the premise to be an amazing game, and it just didn't register with me. And it was, I don't know, I just didn't like it. I don't know about you guys, but that was one of the moments where I took a chance on the game after reading previews in a magazine to give it a big kind of spread in the magazine. I think it was Games Master or something like this is going to be the future of gaming. It was a helicopter type game, and it just didn't work for me. That was one of those ones.
Yeah, I can agree to that, because I do remember you having it, and I do remember you letting me try it, and I was the same. I couldn't fully understand what was going on. Plus, I like sci-fi games, but I just didn't understand the concept behind a lot of stuff, because I remember even way back when I first played the PlayStation, I played first game I ever played in it was Shockwave Assault down in one of the boys' house. And again, because it was sci-fi, I thought it was cool, but again, I wasn't the biggest. I wasn't a sci-fi nut.
Yeah,
so I didn't. Yeah, so I didn't get it. I now looking back, I actually love that stuff, but I think at the time it didn't appeal. And again, because it was a different control system and it was moving around, and I remember using if you had control system using the inverted controls to move up and to move down, I couldn't get my head around that at all. So I was all over the place,
Where I'm the opposite. Even when I'm playing an FPS game now, I have to invert the.
Yeah, I don't know how you do that. I don't know how. I can't do that at all.
It stems from those games, playing those helicopter games, the 3D ones. Anyway, do you remember was it Air Combat was one of the first ones on PS1?
Yeah.
It just came naturally to me to push down on the controller to move up, because I think that's how it is in real life, right? In an airplane, isn't it? Yeah. So I think that's it. Just came natural to me to do that, and that's how I play. I couldn't if I picked up the controller from you after playing Call of Duty Deathmatch, and you didn't change the settings, I'd be gone.
I used to have to do that with you. If you were playing the game, I'd have to go into the settings and change the bloody thing. There's me thinking to myself, talk about going backwards.
And I'll never forget, I don't know who it was, but it was one of the other mates. He was so stubborn, he was like, no, I'll work with your controls.
I couldn't.
He got smashed on it.
Yeah.
But while we're still on PS1, there's one game that I'm hoping Steve remembers, because it's his fault. that me and him got hooked on it. But I'm interested to know what prompted him to buy it, and it's a certain managerial game in the football genre. And that came out of nowhere. It was like, what is this game, Steve? And you're like, oh yeah, I saw this and I think it's going to be good. So I'll let you talk about it. What was it that kind of prompted you to get this particular game?
It was more or less very concerned with we'd be at the time looking at magazines and the whole lot. And
Yeah.
then saying there was, well, say, an up-and-coming game, a management game on the console, which is, to me, was the first ever.
Yeah.
And I like, know me, I was big into football and everything. So, we'll have to have a look at this. So basically, just reading through it. And the more I read about it, the more I was falling over it, and the things you could do, and the whole lot. And I'm going, I'm definitely buying this. So like sort of teammate tactics, transfers, and the whole lot, and scouting. It was just, I said, yeah, I'm getting it. There's no doubt about it. I love football, and the first managerial game out on console, I'm getting it. That was it. There was no change in my mind.
And that game is Premier Manager 98.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I never forget like that summer. I guess it was 1998, right? And me and you and stayed over in your house and in Peter's room, because that's where the PlayStation was always based, and the boys would be all in sleep about say 11 p.m. at night, and we'd be like lovely. Premier Manager 98.
It was one of the rare times when I actually couldn't get on the computer because there was no way I was getting a chance to play it when you two were on that.
Oh, and I never forget like the whole night. Peter, I'm not kidding you, right? Like me and him, we'd finish the season. It would probably take what would you say, 45 minutes to an hour, not even to finish.
Probably, just over an hour. You could make it do it quick. You didn't have to go through it.
Yeah.
But, and it was so addictive, addictive.
What made it so addictive? Because it was so simple.
Yes, no,
That's
it's
what
like
made it.
ridiculous.
Now you have stadiums and you'd all little bits and pieces in Manager 98, but it was just simple, just basic.
Yeah.
That's what made it so good. You don't have to go in depth and talk about now the contracts and all this type of thing.
I know, yeah, it's too detailed.
It's too detailed now. It's like trying to be real life. Back
Yeah.
then, no. You bought a player and accepted your wages, terms, that was it, done. You know what I mean?
Was that was like you said? You remember you two years would actually buy certain players. You'd actually buy one particular player from like a lower division, and he ended up being the best player in Europe or something like that. Scoring goals in every game.
Name. Yeah.
I'm just trying to take now. I know somebody bought a player, the club accepted it. Do we have to do the wages, or was it just once the club accepted that was it? The player was yours. I'm just trying to remember.
I think you could offer them. I think you could offer them a certain wage, if I remember correctly. They would have a value. I'm trying to think. They had a value, right? And if you met the value, I think you had to obviously offer a wage, if I remember correctly, just to attract them. But what Peter's talking about there was one player in the game. Well, I'm sure there was more, but we stumbled across one, and so we're in the Premier League, and this guy was in the Championship or Division 1 or whatever it was called.
I think he was even lower than that.
Yeah, he was way down.
Yeah.
And we just took a chance. And I'll admit, I'd say it was you, Steve, who had found this guy. And he was banging goals in every game, like hat-trick after hat-trick. And I think you bought him for like £200,000 or something.
For next to nothing.
Yeah. And then
Sibierski or Sebersky or something. It came with an S.
SKI or something like that. Yeah, because I remember his value being cheap at the start, but by the time we have to say 2 or 3 seasons, his value skyrocketed.
That was up front.
Yeah.
I played him on the wing.
Yeah. Oh, he was on the wing. Yeah,
sure. He wasn't even a striker, wasn't he? Now,
no, he was out on the wing, and it was just he was averaging a goal a game, even 2 goals a game.
Yeah,
it was ridiculous.
That was our introduction to investments.
It was.
That was how to spend stupid money.
how cool was it? Do you remember, you get to the end of the season and we couldn't help ourselves. We had to see what offers we get for our players and stuff like that. And you'd be like, accept. And you'd be full of money. And then you say yourself, oh, right, I'm after making like 50 million there. Right, I better start buying players. And then all of a sudden you're into the next season. And before you know it, your elbow's getting up for a walk and we're like, shit. Throw something over there. You remember the little power light on the PlayStation? It was a green. Cover that up, get into bed, pretend we're asleep, and he'd go off out to walk and we'd be back on, save the game.
Yeah, because he used to come into the room to make sure everything was knocked off before he go out.
Yeah, we'd have to cover the light so he wouldn't switch on the wall.
Oh yeah, I remember that well.
That was amazing. Like we done that for like weeks.
Months.
No sleep during the day.
Yeah, you actually 2 years didn't sleep for weeks actually with that and the other game you were playing as well.
I remember even one time, I took around the house and we started playing. Started the championship. I was Wolves and he was somebody else. And so we got halfway through the season, but we had to do something. So we said, "Oh, no, we can't leave the game with this." So what do we do? And we had enough space on the memory card because he'd only won and he'd Resident Evil and whatever, blah blah. So what to do was to left his house, legged it back round to our house to get a memory card, free it up, and took it back round to his house just to save it from your manager because it took up to 15 blocks.
Oh, it did, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I do remember that.
Memory card.
That was our venture into. Do you remember you could buy the unofficial memory cards, but it'd be very unstable.
Yeah.
And there was one. So what was the standard memory card? 16 megabytes.
15.
15.
Oh no, it was,
And
no,
you
no, it was 1 megabyte cartridge with a 15 slots.
That's right.
Right, and then you could go out to the shop and buy a third party one that was double
Yeah.
the storage. But they were so unreliable.
Yeah.
You have all your. I remember learning a valuable lesson. Don't put your important saves on that. Just
No.
keep that as a backup, just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were crap. But
You
yeah,
might have got lucky and got a decent one, but that was only few and far between. If you bought 10 of them, you'd be lucky if 2 of them actually really worked.
yeah.
Fuck.
It was just
Yeah.
there was a drawer full of memory cards. Right, where's that? Where's that memory card with that save on that game where I was playing 6 months ago? And you were like,
I still have a box somewhere with old memory cards. I can guarantee you some of those old save files are still on them.
Steve was can you imagine like the 8 saves still there?
It might just be.
Yeah, probably would.
That's
And I'd
cool.
love to give that a go again. I really would.
Actually, you know what? That's something to do. I actually have an old PlayStation up in the attic, one of the wee small ones, the mini ones. I must actually dig it out someday and actually do that and go through those memory cards, see if they're still working. I'll send you photos of them and see what files are on them.
Dude,
I still have. I have my original PlayStation from the first
Oh
one. I
yeah,
ever bought.
yeah.
And it's there. It works. I need to go on Amazon and buy the adapter that you can plug into the HDMI.
Ah yeah.
Just need to buy that, and that's at the minute I'm gonna be doing up my own room here, and I'm gonna set up like a bench where I can plug on all my old consoles. And I
Yeah,
can just
that'd be
have a
cool.
go.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
delve back into them. Nostalgia. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. But moving along, right? There's a couple of games I think we're still on PS1. I think at this point, but there's a few other games that it's going to trigger memories, and I think the big one has to be International Track and Field. And for me, I'm trying to remember because I was the one who got that game. But was it a demo that we played, or did I just
No.
take a punt on that?
I
think you took a
think you
punt.
just took a punt in that because like it was the first time I'd ever played it. I'd never played it until you got it.
Right.
You
Okay.
take a
I was
punt,
wondering.
you take a punt on it until you've been to basketball and football or whatever. Like international track and field is completely different from athletics. What
Yeah.
made you go down that route?
But do you know what I think made me go for it? Do you remember? I think Peter, you probably remember this, but on the Master System, was there a game called X Games?
There was an Olympics game on the Master System.
No, but there was one where you like, maybe it was Mega
Oh,
Drive, actually.
California games I had.
California
Yeah,
Games. That's
yeah,
the one.
yeah.
And I think when I saw International Track and Field, I thought of California Games because
Yeah.
you had like certain events in California
Yeah,
Games, right?
yeah.
And that was a cool game. That was
Yeah.
a really cool game.
Yeah, it's hard though, but it was cool.
Yeah, and I think International Track and Field was the one that kind of like I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this a go, and it didn't disappoint. In fact, it made me go out and buy the multi-tap.
Multi-tap, I do remember that, yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Because we were playing a two-player, we were kind of like, because you brought it over to the house, and I remember when I first seen it, I didn't think I'd like it, because I was like, I'm not really into these type of games, but then I sat down and played it, and I was like, you know what, this is really freaking good. But then I do remember then, what ended up happening was, we would, how would you put it, I mean, folks would go out on a Friday night, we'd take it over, and we would take the PlayStation down into the living room so that we'd have it on the big TV. And then obviously you had recently bought the multi-tap, and so that's where it just took off, like, because in the living room.
Yeah,
and
the
like I
laughs
said,
we
and
had.
like I said before, it's the one game that I never thought I would enjoy, and I have enjoyed it more than any multiplayer game I've ever played. The laughs with that game is just priceless, because that for me is one of the funniest games, if not the funniest multiplayer game I've ever played in my life.
Yeah,
But the thing is, you were enjoying it with everybody. Everybody was messing up. Everybody was laughing at me. I was laughing at all yous. The only event I couldn't do was the javelin. I thought I was throwing it dead far, and then I threw it up and realised it threw it up dead high in the air and realised it only landed 2 feet in front of me.
I remember right that the character used to go "Ugh,"
Yeah.
when you.
All here was the announcer said foul, and I would lose me marbles altogether. I'd fall out the chair every time one used mess up. Like I'd be
I got a
stitches.
question. I got a question for both of you. Do you think that international? I know my answer. Do you think that International Track and Field was as good multiplayer game as Mario Kart on the SNES?
I say yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
me too.
I would say
like I know we were a wee bit older because it was, I'd say maybe a year or two had passed when we got into the PlayStation. But like, don't get me wrong, Mario Kart was brilliant and Laz used to with that. But we screamed the place down with International Track and Field.
Yeah,
So we did.
it was so good. And there must have been a good 8 events, right? Because you had the normal 100-meter sprint, then you had the hurdles, the javelin. What do you call that? The heavy ball thing. I can't think of what
Shot put or whatever you call it.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
But it was so addictive.
And then you had the shot put that was on the cord, you know.
Oh
the spin.
yeah.
I can't think of what that's called.
You were in like it was like a half cage kind of thing, and you swung it around.
Yeah. And you had the swimming.
Yeah.
And you had the what do you call it? The long jump.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
And even the pole vault as well.
Oh, the pole vault,
that
yes.
was a good laugh. That was good fun.
It was so good because you had like up to 4 players, right?
Yeah.
Am I right? 4 players, and say there was 8 events, and it was such good fun and good crack. And then at the end of it, you had the podium who came first, second, and third.
It was hilarious because even the younger brothers, like, so they were all only like say between say 6 to 10. Like even the youngest fella I think was only about 5, I think 6 at the time when we were 7 when we were playing it. And sure, he was playing it with us as well. And sure, the whole lot of us, we'd be laughing at him, they'd be laughing at all of us. And sure, like, it didn't matter what age you were, everybody was screaming with the laughing.
You didn't have to play it.
Yeah,
you just sit and watch.
Just sit and watch it.
So funny.
That's to say, yeah, it was the one game that everybody could get together, and it's just everybody had a blast. You know,
that's Konami at their best. I thought.
Oh yeah.
You know, like so good. Like they've had so many hits over the years. Like
and
lots
again,
of hits.
That for me is, I think when we look at hidden gems, right? I know we say we looked at other games in the past, but no game more than that has ever hit me in a way where it's because it's a game I know myself that I usually would genuinely never play, and I wouldn't even consider it. But I ended up giving it a go, and it ended up being one of the, if not definitely the best multiplayer experience I've ever had in a game. Yeah, it's even now thinking about it, it's fun.
Yeah, it's just a simple game with simple gameplay mechanics. Bash the buttons to speed up your character.
The silliness of the animations and the sound effects made it even more funny. That's what was hilarious about it.
And you know, that's the thing about it. I don't think it attempted to be funny. I think it just ended
up for us just being absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
Scream.
Yeah. Oh, gee, God, there's so many games. I'm just talking about this, and I'm thinking of other ones. I'm thinking of NBA Jam, and I always forget.
NBA Jam Stream, brilliant.
Exactly, PS1, first one to go into 3D graphics, right?
Yeah.
Some of the dunks in that game were outrageous. Yeah. Like the only killer for that game was the load times were insane.
I loved playing that game with you as well because you could play a co-op. You know, I thought that.
Oh yeah, throwing alley-oops and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
That was it, but like I bought that game because I was big into basketball.
You're mad at the basketball. Yeah,
I loved NBA Jam in the beginning. You know, the old 16-bit version was amazing. I'm just trying to think. Like we had the international track and field, but there's one other game as well that was a total random choice for me, and I got it, and that was XCOM Enemy Unknown.
That was another one. Yeah.
Like. I just loved the look of the game. It was one of those ones, right, where no previews, no nothing, just in the store, looking for something new to play. Looked at that, intrigued me. Alien invasion, turn-based combat. To be honest, I didn't even know it was turn-based combat, but it just visually, you know, that's the thing about buying games, right? Like we all have that thing that pulls us in, and for me, I would say more than others, it's the visuals.
Yeah.
You know, if we want to discuss that, like you can talk about. If none of your friends have told you about it, if you just walk into a video game store now and you just look at a bunch of games, it's the visuals I think is what grabs you more than anything. Well, for me anyway, personally, it's the visuals.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, the theme of the game, the genre of the game, then that all follows it. But I have to say I'm a sucker for visuals. I think that's my number one thing.
Yeah.
You know, like I just think that first and foremost, I think visually it has to be really good, and I think that for me that stems from the likes of Mortal Kombat, you know, because Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter were the two big beat 'em up games back then. I was like amazed by Mortal Kombat's realism, the photorealistic
digitized
character sprites. You still had pixel graphics in the background and stuff like that, but the actual characters in it were photorealistic, and I thought, wow, like I mean that was a leap forward, I thought, in visuals, and that's what pulled me into that game. And then obviously I found out, you can, like, there's blood in this game, you can perform fatalities, you can rip a guy's head off. You know, that was secondary, because that was, you heard that from your friends in school, and you're like, wow. But I was already sold on the game before that, and that was stems from the days where we used to go to the video store and just rent them out, take a chance. It looked cool, you know, the logo was cool. I was like, wow, gotta try this game out.
I always find, like, just when you're thinking of that there, what used to always get me, because my favourite type of games were always kind of like horror, even though it's funny, like, I used to be afraid in my life of horror games until I played Resident Evil, but then when that would kind of changed. But when I used to go into a video game shop, don't get me wrong, I liked fighting games, I loved, like, say, first person shooter games, even though there is a decent selection on the PlayStation. But there was very few that really stood out to me, like Duke Nukem 3D. I loved Doom, although Doom used to give me motion sickness when I first played it. But I loved Duke Nukem 3D. I loved Quake 2. But I will admit, games that always appealed to me the most when I go into store shelves, and they were the games I would always be looking at particular. You know, saying that I loved Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. I always loved the visuals in that, the original game. But for me,
chose that one.
Yeah, for me, anything that looked like Resident Evil, didn't matter what it was, and either racing games. I just loved I loved racing games anyway. You know, like Formula One. There was like Gran Turismo, whatever, like Colin McRae, but even the older ones like Destruction Derby 2, or anything like that. But anything that looked like Resident Evil, it didn't even have to be a horror game. Once it had pre-rendered backgrounds, I was instantly sold. You know.
Yeah.
Now, most of the games I played were great. There was a couple of now that weren't considered that great, but it didn't matter. I would have played them anyway. You know.
Yeah. I think, visually really is the appealing thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned Legacy of Kain, because that's one that I've actually forgotten about.
That is
it was one of the ones I wanted to talk about, because the voice acting in that game,
incredible.
It was one of the first ones. It was truly incredible.
Yeah, it was one of the first ones to have really proper professional voice acting, and it was really authentic and very, reflective of the.
It was like a very mature version of the old Zelda top-down, those RPGs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very kind of adult themes,
Yeah. Just when I'm thinking of just another game there, just when you mentioned XCOM, there is another game that's sticking in my mind right now that you and Steve-O and even some of the lads used to play, and you had it. Theme Hospital. I didn't play it as much. I didn't really play it all that much. But you and Steve-O, like the other two games, like Prime Manager and XCOM, used to, along with a few of the other brothers, were addicted to that as well. You used to play the hell out of that too.
I'm trying to think. I got that game, right?
I think it was you that got that, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think why I got that.
You would take it over most days, and you used to sit there for hours.
That was
Steve-O, and one of the other boys.
Do you remember the mad diseases that was in that game? Big head syndrome and stuff.
And you popped them with a pin.
Yeah. But that was cool.
Yeah.
But going back to XCOM, I think I got Theme Hospital first, and then I enjoyed Theme Hospital, and I think, I'm going to give this genre another go, and that's I think I ended up getting XCOM.
Yeah.
But I had no idea what I was doing in XCOM. It was a much harder game to play than Theme Hospital.
I think it was kind of like the strategies, but I think that's what kind of got you into that slower pace type of gameplay style. Because even then, you went on, then yourself and Steve got mad into like Broken Sword 2, and we'd never played any Broken Sword games before that. And I think that's where it kind of snowballed then.
Yeah, all that genre.
Yeah, you were kind of experiencing it really for the first time, and you were allowing yourselves to sit down and enjoy it for what it was. And they were actually really good freaking games.
Yeah, the visuals now.
Yeah.
I have to admit, on Broken Sword, that's what grabbed me, the visuals.
Yeah.
And I think Broken Sword was a demo that I played, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I think my introduction to that was a demo, and I fell in love with it. It was just playing a live-action cartoon where you controlled it.
I must actually go back and play them someday because they're so good.
Alright, guys, so moving along to later eras in consoles, there's one definitely I want to ask, and Peter, you bought this game. And it was the first. I'm guessing it's the first game you got on PlayStation 2, and that was GTA 3.
Yeah.
My question to you is: did you buy that just because of the name, or had you done a bit of research, or what?
Once you see, don't get me wrong, we were still playing the PS1, but when I started to read about Grand Theft Auto 3 in the magazines. Now don't get me wrong, because I love Grand Theft Auto 1. I did like Grand Theft Auto 2, but I don't know, couldn't gel with it the same way as I did with the first game.
It went backwards. It went to went back a few decades.
It felt like that's what it felt like, yeah.
And it was based in London. No, that was GTA London.
That was GTA London, but I mean, but even this GTA 2, even the cars, everything felt like it was from the 1940s.
Yeah. It went back. Yeah. It went back decades.
But then it's weird because then the intro in it, I remember the lad that was actually doing the intro, he was an actor that ended up being later in EastEnders years later. And I do remember, because I'm very good with faces, I never forget faces, and the intro felt modern, but the game felt old, if you know what I mean. It was kind of a weird one. And when GTA 3 then was announced, and the fact is it was in 3D, and I think it helped as well with the previews, because when you looked at the magazines, even some of the old PS1 PlayStation 1 magazines were kind of covering it slightly in previews as well, but they were trying to hint at the PS2. And I remember we were still buying the magazines at the time, and I remember, and I think the screenshots that they got on the photographs definitely did it justice, because you've seen this massive open world thing, and you've seen the detail, and you're like, holy crap, this looks amazing. Yeah. I knew myself, it was one of those instances where I had to get it. It was the same for me with the Resident Evil remake with the GameCube. I had to go out, and I didn't care what it was. I actually bought the game, because remember we went to holidays to Mayo, we went down to see our granddad, and you were there that weekend as we stayed in that house out in the town, in Ballina. And I went and I bought GTA 3 before I even bought the PlayStation 2. I didn't have a PS2, but I didn't care. I bought the game because I remember buying a magazine when I was there, and I bought GTA 3. I remember we were up in the room, and we were looking between the three of us, and a few of the other boys. All we were doing was looking at the game cover, reading the magazines that we'd bought, but then we had also we were too busy reading through the manual again, looking through and trying to figure out stuff, and could not wait to play the game. But at this point, none of us still had a PlayStation 2, and a couple of days later when we got back, I remember because me and you, they go walking in the pen factory at the time, but I was on the night shift. I think you were on a different shift to me at the time. I think you were, because me and you, I don't think, worked on the same shifts. And I remember coming off.
We were working in the same place, right?
Yeah,
but
we were working
alternating shifts.
Alternating shifts, yeah. And I remember that I was like, had enough, I'm going down. I remember you telling me, I think that they were doing like £1 for punt down in Uri.
Yes.
And I was like, you know what, I'm going to go, I don't care.
That was enough for you.
So I've been saving up a little bit of money for the last couple of months because I knew eventually I was going to buy it. So I was like, right, I'm working now, I can afford it, and money was decent, so it wasn't too bad. And this is considering I was 18, 19 years old. Actually, I was 18, so yeah, that'll tell you. And what ended up happening was I got back from work, went in, got something to eat, didn't go to sleep, went straight out. A few minutes later, sat down the street because the bus where we used to live, the bus would always arrive down at the street every 15 to 30 minutes. Got straight on the bus around, I think it was about 8:30 in the morning. Went straight down, got the Black Rock bus from town, from down by the church, and went straight to Newry and went in. Can't remember where it was. I went into one of the game shops. I think it was in the Buttercrane anyway. And I went in, I bought it, and I think I paid about £225, but at the same time, because I was able to pay it for, like, at the time was still Irish pounds. This was before the euro came in, and I bought it for £225, and I was like, sweet. And they dropped the console just slightly. The console had been out not even a year. It was out a bit between 6 and 8 months at this stage, but they gradually dropped the price slightly, and they were doing deals on it at that time. So again, I went in and I bought it. Now I had to wait a while because I couldn't remember where the bus station was. I was lucky enough I bumped into one of my cousins. He showed me where the bus depot was, so I was like, that's grand. But I didn't go home until Jesus, because I remember that bus. That was like the longest bus ride home ever. I could not. I was just like, I was cracking up.
That's because what you bought.
Yeah, that too. It ended up being about an hour and a half anyway, just to get back into from Newry into town, because there were so many stops. Because you had to go through Ravensdale and everything. And I didn't go home. It was well after 3 o'clock when I got home. You know, and that was considering I hadn't slept. So I went in and I played the game straight away, but I was like, oh, to hell with this, I needed to sleep. So I went back to sleep for about 2-3 hours. And I remember then you called over later on that evening because you were itching, but you at the same time you knew it was like, oh yeah, let him sleep for a few hours. And you came over and I was sitting up in the room playing it, because I remember I used to always sit up against where my bed is positioned now in my room. I had the bed position in the same way up against the window, and I'd always sit against that wall against the window and leaning at the back, because I remember the wallpaper that was at the back of the window was all worn, because we used to always sit there, me, you, all the boys, even my dad used to sit there. We'd be playing the PlayStation and we'd all sit in the same area, so we would, because the wallpaper was completely worn away. And we sat there and just played the hell out of it. And I remember you coming over and we were like, holy crap, like, they just couldn't get over how good the game was. But the music, the sound effects, especially when you got into the muscle car, like the convertible, the Banshee, oh my god, that was just insane. But for me was the music, the soundtracks, the radio stations. That for me was probably the highlight, because that added so much to the atmosphere and the vibe of the game, that it just, plus it was hilarious. And like, yeah,
for me, doing taxi missions.
Yeah, they were hilarious.
It was like real life. I was like, what? Yeah. I can actually do taxi missions in this game.
The taxi is just one of the funniest cars, just when you're saying that, because it's not the quickest, but it's just so chuckable. You can fling it around everywhere.
Yeah, you know? It's an all rounder.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, GTA, yeah. I have to admit now, the PS2 era, I missed a lot of that because I think I kind of thought I started working and I just didn't have time to game. And as you mentioned, you're in shift work, so you're like 1 week it was days, next week it was evenings, next week after that was
Yeah, because
nights.
you didn't actually buy your PlayStation 2 for a good bit after, so you didn't.
No, I took a chance.
Yeah.
I was down at Veddy's. I would go down to Veddy's every so often, and we play Pro Evo 2.
Yeah.
Pro Evolution Soccer 2, and we just have a few beers, play that game, and I fell in love with gaming then again. And I just took a chance one weekend coming home from Veddy's because Veddy lived in Newry where you bought your PS2.
Yeah.
And very much like what you said, I said I was waiting at the bus depot and I said, you know what, I'm going to treat myself. And I walked over to the local shopping centre, went into the game store,
as you do,
seeing what deals they had, with games included. And I just bought a PS2, but I think there was 2 games came with it, and I got PES as well.
Nice.
I came home.
Yeah, you needed the practice. That's why.
I just yeah. But yeah, I just needed to. I just got it, and I just got me back into gaming at that point. Now I didn't get back into it full time. I was just having fun really. But yeah, PS2 console. Yeah, that was when I bought mine. And yeah, that was really it. And
yeah,
I have to admit, like, I'm trying to think. Like, I didn't buy too many PS2 games at the time because, as I said, it was later into the console life.
Yeah,
I think. Steve-O, I know you got what you call it, the Sega Dreamcast in between all of that.
Yeah.
Which was totally left field to everybody. We were like,
we weren't expecting that. Yeah.
It's not that. It's like we jumped from Mega Drive and SNES to PS1, and PS1 was so big that we didn't look at Saturn, the Sega Saturn, and be like. And I rented out the Sega Saturn from one of the video stores just to see if it was any good, and it just didn't appeal to me. It was really strange. And then all of a sudden the Dreamcast came out, which was, am I right in saying the Dreamcast was after the PS2?
No, it was before. It was literally the year before.
Right.
Yeah.
So the PS2, the Dreamcast was like the next gen. It was the first next gen.
Yeah, because it got the leap on the PlayStation literally the year before it. So
and I know this topic is about buying games, but if I asked Evo, what exactly prompted you to buy the Dreamcast, like to go so kind of divert from the norm?
And the Dreamcast, because what was it? It was 100 and
28.
128, is that?
Oh. Yeah, something like that.
So, yeah,
128 bit.
And obviously, say it was different. And say obviously, with the old going back to the old consoles, the Sega Mega Drive, Sega Master System, they were brilliant consoles. But going forward, the games that was being released, then say for like the Dreamcast, when I heard that Code Veronica was coming out, it was only going to be released on the Dreamcast. And then there was a game that I read so much about and I fell in love with it. I said, I'm buying this, and that was Shenmue. They more or less they were the games that I was looking at that enticed me to buy the Dreamcast. And with them 2 games alone, I know there was a few games out for Dreamcast, but not a hell of a lot. But they were the 2 games that definitely got me to buy it.
And so we all know why. So you bought the Dreamcast because you probably heard of Code Veronica.
Yeah.
Because we were such big Resident Evil fans, and that was a given. You were going to buy that game anyway.
You were going to buy it because it was really coming out on the Dreamcast. I don't know why. On the PlayStation, because considering the rest was on it, but why the Dreamcast, I don't know. But I said, I'm getting the Dreamcast. I have to play Code Veronica.
I remember the only game you had on it for a while when you first got it, because there wasn't an awful lot of games at its launch, or even for the first couple of weeks or even months or so into it, and you had ready to rumble. Because I remember. Yeah, because I remember you used to always pick the skinny guy with the afro.
Yeah, he was deadly.
Yeah,
I remember that as well.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that game actually.
Yeah, it wasn't bad actually. I mean, the Dreamcast visuals were really good.
Yeah, there was some epic games in that console. There really was.
But the only downside was there just wasn't enough of them. That was the only downside.
Yeah, it's such a pity what happened to that console.
Yeah.
It was definitely, it didn't deserve to die out so quickly.
Me and Me and Steve were talking about this not too long ago, and we were kind of going over some of the games, and I asked him what games did he have or what he didn't have, and there was a couple of games that came up. There was a port of the PC version of Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, and for me, I remember Steve bought that, and that was the closest to the PC original that I played, and that game was absolutely brilliant. But actually, had better graphics in the PC. It was mental. And would have been a strategy game. It was just fucking awesome.
I love the PC.
Yeah,
that's what I had to do, was buy that as well. And Dreamcast, once I knew it was being released, therefore I'm getting it.
That was my introduction to the Tom Clancy series.
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah,
but just ask Steve-O. So Shenmue, because that's kind of the one I wanted to kind of pick your brain on, because I knew nothing about Shenmue. So what is it that kind of attracted you to that game, Shenmue?
Like, to me, it was like free roaming, and it was more like the story going back into like Japan, and it's like martial arts. But his father got, say, Ryu caught up in, or his father got caught up in a few different things, and he died because of it.
Right.
So his son then is who you control as then he's out to avenge his father. The whole story to it, and then led on to these like a quest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? From where he lives to obviously to find the killer of his father, and just the whole story was absolutely fantastic. Like free roaming and like upgrading your skills.
Yeah, the RPG elements.
Exactly. That's
that's kind of. Would you say that's like a big attraction to you? The RPG elements of the game.
RPG, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but how did you find out about Shenmue?
It was more or less when I got the Dreamcast, and then like buying the Dreamcast magazines.
Right. So the magazines, right? Yeah,
the magazines. Because to be honest, when I had a Dreamcast, I don't recall anybody that I know that actually had a Dreamcast that I could talk to and say, "Oh, this is coming."
You're the only person I know.
Yeah, that's it. I can't remember anybody, being honest.
No, it was all PlayStation at the time.
So it was all PlayStation, and then so it was more or less. And even like with PlayStation magazines, there was nothing there like for Dreamcast, because I was obviously PlayStation, Sony PlayStation, but then the Dreamcast magazines come out, so that's what I was doing, because obviously I had the console, and that's how I got to figure out the games that was coming out. You know, kind of way, like the Shenmue 1, 2, Code Veronica.
Because I do remember you used to buy a couple of the magazines. Obviously, you wanted to read up more about the upcoming games, but I do remember them. They, like the PlayStation, they also had some demo discs. I do remember one particularly having playable demo V-Rally 2 on it.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
like even the likes of the Dino Crisis, that was released for as well.
You had that. You had the Resident Evil 2 and 3 as well, and they had a lot more content than what was in the PlayStation version as well.
Extra content.
Yeah, because the RE2 had the battle mode in it as well. Yeah. Like it was kind of like a version of the Mercenaries. Yeah.
It was two other games,
and you could play as Chris as well.
Yeah, which only what got me as well, because I had the gun, was House of the Dead.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah. House of the Dead 2.
It was just a port over from the actual arcade version.
That was brilliant.
I remember the both of us playing that game.
Yeah. All of us
used the controller, right?
Yeah.
All of us played the hell out of that. The voice acting was so cheesy.
Yeah, no, that's one of your best arcade, shooters.
Yeah.
But there was one game you mentioned there that's going to take me right back, Dino Crisis. And I remember I remember we read about Dino Crisis, right? It was big in a magazine. Oh, Resident Evil creators are creating a dinosaur game.
That's what got me.
Yeah. And, we heard about it. There was a little bit of hype to it. But do you remember we got, I think, I'm not ashamed to admit on this podcast, that we bought the the pirate version of that game.
Yeah.
That's what it was originally, yeah.
It was out in Japan, and it, back then you had to wait like 6 months or something like that
can't wait.
Yeah, you had the Japanese version, and then 6 months later you had the European version, the PAL version as they call it.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? And I remember we were going out too, so we went out to one of the local markets, the markets I'm talking about, and it was there, right? They always had the latest version, and I remember getting a pirate copy of Dino Crisis on PS1, and the front cover had the claw of the dinosaur and all Japanese text.
Yeah.
Took it home, played. Took it home. Yeah, took it home, played it, booted it up on the PlayStation. Having a PlayStation chipped at this stage, not ashamed to say. And I realised the game was subtitled in Japanese, and the menus and the puzzles and everything were in Japanese. And you know what? I'm proud to say I completed that game on the Japanese version.
And that's
just taking a chance.
But that's the thing, because we played so much of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 leading up to that, we kind of had an idea of how, because the mechanics were very similar. It was just the puzzles were very different.
Well, it's Shinji Mikami, right?
Yeah. But I do remember when you got that, like, we knew nothing about Dino Crisis. That was a complete
just the little bit of magazine kind of preview.
But even at that, it was because there was so little known about it. Like that, for me personally, that just came out of the blue. Like I knew nothing about it until you had actually gotten it, and I was like, "Whoa, this is awesome!" You know,
there was a few games. Like I'd say the most games we played was probably around the PS1 era.
Oh yeah.
I would say maybe it's not, but when I think back,
it's the ones we remember the most, I think.
There was just so many. Like that time when we got our PlayStations chipped and we could just buy pirate copies, we went to town.
Because I remember because I bought a couple of games. Well, I actually managed to get actual full, not pirated copies, but actual legitimate versions of a couple of games. I think I got the US version of Cool Border 3. And I actually got it was a Japanese, it was a racing game. It was actually it was a sequel. It was called Option Tuning Car Battle 2. Remember we played it? It's very like Gran Turismo. It was for me at the time. It was the closest that I felt to Gran Turismo in terms of visuals, because it had all the legitimate cars, your Toyota Supras, your Honda Integras, Nissan Skyline. It had it all, and you could tune the cars like Gran Turismo. Again, it was all Japanese. But
visuals were not far off. Well, it wasn't as good as Gran Turismo, but it was photorealistic.
It was for time. I think it was up until Gran Turismo 2, compared to with the first game. It was the closest to the first Gran Turismo game that I felt at the time.
Yeah,
easily.
Yeah.
So back to the Dreamcast. Sorry, I mentioned like Nomad Soul. That was probably a game that I didn't know much about, and that was just like an impulse. Like a futuristic type game.
That was the one that had your man David Bowie in it as a character.
As far as I know.
Yeah, he was in it. Yeah.
I don't remember that. What was that called?
It was called Omicron, the Nomad Soul.
I enjoyed it. No, it was tough.
It was released on the PC as well.
Right. Yeah. Not. That's definitely not one that I remember. Anyway.
It was more of an open world kind of game.
Yeah.
Right, so it was. Yeah.
Another one going back, say, like the strategy, and do you like going back, say, like the PS1 where you Command and Conquer, and then you say mentioned then XCOM, and it wouldn't have really been into strategy games, but it was one that I took a chance on as well. I actually really liked it. Railroad Tycoon. That was one that I bought.
Yeah, I do remember you having that. It was like you took charge like old steam like locomotives and stuff, wasn't it? The old school.
I actually enjoyed it now, and it was something that I'd never think that I'd do, but because I played strategy games before, I just I'll take a chance with this. It was going cheap at the time. I said, sure, I'll give that a go, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
There's another one there that you would love, Diggs, as well, and I got it obviously because we grew up with it and played them, and I had it. Mortal Kombat Gold.
Yes. Was Gold was the one? It was Mortal Kombat 4, but it had extra.
Yeah, it was like a complete version of Mortal Kombat 4, basically. Yeah.
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 I enjoyed that. Definitely.
Yeah. I'm just looking at it here actually online, and it takes me back. Jesus. Like
when you think about it, remember it.
Mortal Kombat, like that was the first 3D Mortal Kombat. That was amazing. It had like extra characters, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
they always did that. They always did that. Do you remember Mortal Kombat 3 and then Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3?
Yeah.
The the big controversy around Mortal Kombat 3 was they didn't have Scorpion in it.
Yeah.
So they had to
that
release
annoyed me.
Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and Scorpion was in Mortal Kombat, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3.
He
Yeah.
was my favourite character in all Mortal
Yeah.
Kombat.
Well,
He wasn't there, I
it's
was
safe.
getting
It's safe.
crying.
It's safe to say that when he was added into it, he was easily the most used character.
Mm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Even just going down to games I've
It was
listed
easy
there
to use as well.
with the Dreamcast, there was some top class games there, like, you know what I mean?
Just when you're mentioning that, because for me, like, obviously I love racing games, but there was one game that I did buy, because I know you had the Dreamcast, and usually you would one that usually bought your own games, but there was one game I did buy for it. And now I actually had the, because you still had the Dreamcast even when we got the PS2, and I remember you were still playing your Dreamcast. But I do remember one summer, a few of us went to Dublin, and I did buy a racing game, and I got it cheap, and it was considered as one of the best racing games on it, and I got it like for like £20 at the time. It was called Metropolis Street Racer.
Oh, yes.
That game was brilliant. It was so bloody addictive, really hard, but that game was brilliant because it actually had proper authentic music from like ongoing like DJs and stuff at the time, but they were put into like radio stations, kind of like Grand Theft Auto. But even you were driving around like actual proper like cityscapes and streets, like say around London and around like Paris and other areas around the world, like, you know, like real life locations. And it was, that was cool. That was a very, very good game. Again, because I had realistic cars like Mazda MX-5s, even like Opel Astra Coupes, and very rare cars that you wouldn't normally see. You know, it was very, very cool.
I remember that vaguely. Actually, it was MSR, wasn't it?
It was the first racing game as well that I'd ever played that you had to use the shoulder buttons, like the left trigger and R trigger, to accelerate and brake, and that took a long time to adapt to. I couldn't get used to it at first.
Yeah. There's just another one there now that it's just after sprung into me head there, and I completely forgot all about it. But I'm nearly sure it was a Dreamcast. Now I can't really remember much about it, but I'm nearly sure it was a Dreamcast. Called Blue Stinger.
Yeah, you had that.
Yeah. Now I can't. It's just after popping into me head just there because I completely forgot all about it.
That was actually one of the first games you ever bought for that.
I think so, because it's not like when you were an agent, an undercover agent or something.
It's a Resident Evil type clone. It was survival horror anyway. So it was.
It just had to pop into my head down there, and I don't know why it did, but it just did. And I'm going, geez, can't remember much about it, but just the name straight away popped in my head.
Funny you should say that. Sorry for cutting across you. That I just when you're saying that, because I was listening to a video there only a couple of months ago, and they were talking about that the version of Blue Stinger that was released in the West had a different play style to what was released in Japan. Because in Japan, you actually had the option to play in classic Resident Evil style with fixed cameras. Now everything was in 3D, but you could play from a fixed camera point of view. But in Europe, it played for like more like a third person, like behind the camera. You know, so it was very different. Like,
I just can't remember much. The name just popped into my head. I'm going, there was another one that I just bought just off the cuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's a happy kind of purchase, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that. I have to admit, like, I love that. I love when you randomly find a game and you're just like, I love this to bits, and it starts that whole. It's like Resident Evil. It's like, wow, this is it. I'm hooked on this franchise for life.
Yeah,
it's great when it works and terrible when it doesn't. I'm out of wasting my money. What did I do? And then you're straight away, right?
Yeah.
Trade this in, or is anybody going to swap up me?
Yeah, and that's the thing. And like, if we move on now to say an era where we all have jobs and now we're able to go out and buy our own games as much as we want, you know, it's probably that dangerous time now where I know, Peter, you if I ask you what's in your games library at the minute, you'll be like 4,567
I'll be honest, actually the last proper game I bought was literally what we were talking about earlier on. I bought the remastered edition of Exhumed, or Power Slave Exhumed, and that was about
where was that? What platform?
It was on the PSN, PlayStation 5.
I know, but you think your games library physical and online.
Let's just put it this way, that's the reason why I'm broke. If I go by games in terms of digital catalogue between the PS3, PS4 and PS5, I've easily spent a couple of grand on games. Like I probably have.
Oh, we all have. Absolutely.
I probably have about say 2,000-3,000 games that I know
Yeah, I'm
of.
the same.
And that's not even that's not even including what I have on my Steam account now. In saying that, I bought a lot of Steam games. I managed to get a load of them for free through like coupons or vouchers. But then I managed to buy a load in like dirt cheap, like for maybe about 50 cent or like €1 or €2 here or there. You know, that kind of way. And I bought them in bundles and stuff.
If you when you say bundles, I immediately think of the Humble bundle.
Yeah,
which is really good for getting that.
I actually bought a load of games off that as well.
Yeah,
and there used to be a couple of other sites. You know.
And then when you look at our PlayStations now, we all have PS5s.
Yeah.
And I did subscribe to PS Plus Premium, which then expands your library even further. Not for me. I just don't have enough time to explore all those games. Yeah. But just to get into the nitty gritty of what it is that attracts you to a game, like I said earlier, I think visuals is a big important factor for me.
Yeah.
It's the first thing that kind of draws you in, I think. Now you can buy into hype and all that kind of stuff, but that it may not work out. But what like Steve-o, for you, like, what would you say is the big thing that kind of draws you to a game? If you walked into if you can take yourself back now 15, 20 years ago and you're walking into like HMV or somewhere like that, and you're looking at the wall in front of you, all the PlayStation games there, what is it like that would prompt you to buy a game, spur of the moment type thing?
You look at obviously the first thing that entices you is the cover.
Yeah.
You say look at the games, and that'll grab you straight away, and then say when you look at the back of it. But to me, as you said, you hit the nail on the head, it's the visuals. But then after that, then I go with the type of games I like, which would be like RPGs or say a shooter or games like that.
Yeah.
Now, if it doesn't have it, then it's straight back in the shelf it goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the way I was with games.
I think.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I was going to say everybody's got their own little formula.
Yeah, and that was mine.
That's it. I know. I'm going to slag Peter now. I know his is easy trophies.
Yeah, that. Now, in saying that, I will admit I did get a platinum on a game there a few months ago. But
how many? Here, let's give plug to Peter's platinum collection. How many now, Peter?
Well, counting it's up to nearly 280. But now, in saying that, it's taken me nearly. But that's the first platinum I earned in. Actually, what was the last platinum I earned? No, I did have one a couple of months ago, and I was walking through. I went back for some reason a couple of months ago, going back to playing games on my PS3 that I hadn't played. I think I was playing like Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar. And
Jesus.
Yeah, and that's a grindy game, but I was enjoying it. I was like, because I hadn't sat down and played it, because I have so many games there that I kind of like, that I bought on a whim, or like say I used to go into like Extravision in town, and I'd be the same, pick up like second-hand games like dirt cheap, and again, same thing. Yeah. You pick them up on a whim, you buy them dirt cheap. That's what happened. I ended up buying like Dark Souls, and I couldn't get past the first enemy in it, because he'd kill me with 2 hits, and I'd be there hitting him, and 2 slaps I was dead. So I gave it to my other brother, because he liked playing those games, and sure, he finished it. What ended up happening is his save file corrupted halfway through it, and I'm like to him, do you not go mad? He's like, no, I just turned it on and I just went and played it again. I was like,
oh, that'd be him, alright, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I can't do that. I was like, not with that type of game. That's why even when you said to me it likes of Bloodborne, which is a very similar game, I was like, no, I'm not. I just can't get into those games because they're too stressful for me. Too stressful. Why. They're too difficult for me.
Arkham Asylum stopped me with that. Once.
Because when the Arkham Asylum was the second platinum I'd ever gotten on the PlayStation, and I know that
me too.
It was also what helped me to get addicted to getting platinums as well. But also it was the most strenuous for me because now I played a lot of strenuous games. Don't get me wrong. Mirror's Edge was another one as well. Jesus, that was but that was really cool. But Arkham Asylum doing the trials, I was just like, no, I'm done. Because even when Arkham City rolled around, I was like, no, I'm done. Like
95% of that game was enjoyable.
yeah,
Getting trophies and stuff, and then those trials ruined it.
That game, for me, as much as I love that game, and that's one of my favourite games ever in terms of, like, say, Batman, and superhero games, but it was the one game that drove me to a point that I literally was about to throw a controller off the wall, and I used to get annoyed when I used to play games. I remember like playing like football, like with ISIS Pro, and be giving out and stuff. But this was one time where I actually felt like I nearly wanted to throw the controller out the window, and I never allowed myself to go to that level before. And I realized at that point, no, Peter, this isn't you.
I get that.
Yeah, I don't entertain that now.
Does.
And that's the thing. Even for now, like I used to be addicted to games. But see now I'll admit, because I'm a lot older and I'd like to think I'm a bit wiser, but I just have mellowed an awful lot when it comes to stuff like that. See now, if I find, because even with me doing my YouTube stuff, I play a game, and if I like it, I'll sit down with it. But if I find it's too stressful or if it gets annoying, I just instantly switch it off. I don't entertain it, because I've got to a point. I think it is because I'm getting older. You value your time a lot more. I'm like, I don't want any stress. I don't want any drama, and I don't want something to annoy me because it puts me in bad form. And I'm like, no, I'm not allowing that to happen. So I don't. And in fairness, like when it comes to like platinums, I genuinely think, right, apart from that one I got a couple of months ago, the last platinum I got before that was Resident Evil 4 Remake. That was last year, and before that I hadn't earned a platinum in nearly 3 years. So I hadn't. Because I completely just... Nah. And you see, once I started doing all of the YouTube stuff, that I stopped all that, because my focus went on that, because if I wasn't even buying games even at that. Like, I think I've only bought like 2 games in the last year and a half, because everything else now, because I'm so busy doing my own projects and content, and then between that and working different jobs and stuff, if I'm going to spend time playing games, for me, I have to get into it if I do have a bit of free time. Now, Resident Evil 4 definitely allowed me to get into it, because I was addicted to that when I was playing it. But I find myself just playing games just for creating content, because I enjoy playing them in short bursts. I get what I need and then I move on. But I will say that there are games I find, even with the older ones, that I've actually, because we're doing, especially the PlayStation 1, and even I have a PS2 channel as well, and I found there's games that I've played on that I've never played. Either I never heard of, or I wanted to play years ago, but we couldn't, because obviously, like you said, we were in different regions, and we couldn't get access to all those games. So you either had to get physical copies of them, or you had to get them from certain markets or whatever. But even at that, it was random choice, because you could never always guarantee that the game you wanted was going to be there. But nowadays, with the likes of emulation, if you know how to set all that up, yeah, it's if you know where to find stuff, you'll find it. But I found I've played games now over the last couple of years where I thought they were brilliant. Some of the older games, and again, I find that by just looking at a screenshot, again, I'll see it on the internet, or I'll see a poster, I'll look into something, and I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. So then I go and do a bit of research on it. So I usually always go on, my term of going into a shop now is going onto Google and checking. I search the name of the game, but then I look at the images of the game to see what the gameplay is like. If I see it that I like it, then straight away, oh, that looks really cool. So then I go and look at a video to see if there's any gameplay of it, and then I'll try and find articles about it to see if there's any reviews, or I go on like Wikipedia, or I go on something to get a bit of knowledge around the game. And if it appeals to me, that's when I'm like, yeah, that's a light bulb moment, and I go off then and I go about putting the project together and creating content for it. And that's kind of my way now of how I play games, you know.
Yeah, I get the bit about gameplay.
Yeah.
Going on YouTube and looking for gameplay.
Yeah.
Because you see a game now, you go into the PlayStation Store there, and you see a game, and you say, well, if I'd be interested in that, and then you look at the footage, and it's generally just a theatrical kind of, video, and you're just like, I want to see the gameplay, and that's it. YouTube. Watch the gameplay and enjoy it, and say, all right, okay, that's for me.
Maybe it's just...
I'd agree.
Yeah. Maybe it's just me.
Gameplay.
Yeah, maybe it's just me, but I find over the last number of years, I maybe am more nostalgia driven, but I am getting as much fun out of playing older games than I ever do now with playing modern stuff. Don't get me wrong, I think they're brilliant. I do, and like Resident Evil 4 Remake, fantastic. Resident Evil 2 Remake. The modern now, obviously Resident Evil, yeah, I'm always going to love Resident Evil, but other games, they are appealing. Unless something really draws me interest, I've no heeding it now. And
when you say When you say older games, do you
Yeah.
mean like going back to older games or older format type games?
Like all the like both like say all the formats. Even there yesterday, I on one of my other channels, I was playing Sega Master System games. I'm doing like
Oh, okay.
I'm working on a project where I'm putting together like every fighting game that was released on the Sega Master System. Doing my what I think is the worst, reading up to what I think is the best. You know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of documenting my opinion. So I haven't now the video's finished, but I'm not publishing that for a while. I want to build up like a backlog of stuff.
All right,
But that
right.
it's going to take a while. But just when you're just talking about all the games, just when I just have it there while and tip my tongue before I let you move on, there was two games in particular I do remember back in the day that I went into a shop, never expected to get them, and they were very cheap, and they just happened. They were out a while, but never expected. But they were like Resident Evil. One was a mixture of survival horror, but it was also an RPG. But one wasn't survival horror; it was more arcadey. And I remember getting it for £15. I never expected it. I did see kind of glimpses of it in a magazine, but I ended up when I went in and I seen it. As soon as it looked like Resident Evil, that's it. I'm sold. And it was Hard Edge, and it was called Trag in America, but it ended up being a really cool game. It was very cheesy with the voice acting, as with a lot of those games, but I really enjoyed that. But then for me, I didn't play as many RPGs. I did play Final Fantasy VII and I played a few others, but again, I didn't play as many RPGs way back as I probably would now. But the game that appealed to me, that got me into that as well, was a game called Kodelka, and it came on 4 CDs. But it was also developed by a team that used to work with Squaresoft under the name Sacknot, and they used to work on the Final Fantasy games, and they decided to move away from Square and develop their own game. So this game would become the prequel or the precursor to the Kingdom Hearts, or another Shadow Hearts series, or I think it was Shadow Hearts series, I think. And it was survival horror, and it mixed that with survival horror, which we had seen previously with the likes of Parasite Eve 2. Do you remember that? Because we couldn't play Parasite Eve 1 because it was released only in America and Japan. But we got Parasite Eve 2, thought that was awesome. But then when I got to play Kodelka, and Kodelka was a very different game because it was turn-based, and I usually wouldn't play turn-based games all that much, but I really enjoyed this one because it was really dark, it was gothic, it was based like in Wales in the 18th century. That game I thought was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And there were two hidden gems for me because, again, you just went by sight. You looked at the cover, you kind of had an idea what they were, but then when you seen the graphics and seen pre-rendered backgrounds, looks like Resident Evil, I'm sold. That's it. And yeah, I didn't regret it. Two of the best games I ever bought, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I have to admit, like, just, I guess for me and Steve it was very similar. It's the visuals that drags you in, then the genre after that. I know that there's one game I wanted to talk about, and that's it's such a kind of it's for me it's like I would never have played this game ever, right? And on the PS4 I'm pretty sure it was PS4, it was Destiny 1. And I'm really, really not into sci-fi games. I think as far as sci-fi went, Dead Space was the only kind of sci-fi game really that attracted me back then, and that was only because of a survival horror in space. But Destiny 1, right? So Veddy put me onto Destiny, and he was like, yeah, you got to get this game, it's going to be amazing, blah blah blah. And I bought it, and I started playing it, and I would admit that after like one day of playing that game, I was ready to delete it from my hard drive and say, what a waste of money, right? And lo and behold, Steve-O, my saviour, was playing it, and I was like, oh shit, Steve-O's got it. And I was like, Steve-O, help me, I don't know how to play this bloody game, blah blah blah. And he schooled me on how to play the game, what this meant, what that meant, how to upgrade your character, how to equip the right weapons and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And that just turned out to be a massive, massive hit for me. It looked like it was going to be a biggest regret of spending €70, and he kind of like took me under his wing, this is how you play the game. You got to equip this, equip that, and it became like a drug to me. It became like a drug.
It was the same because you were the ones that got me into it. I actually didn't even have a PS. I didn't even have a PS. I didn't even have a PS4 at the time. I ended up torturing me, and I ended up buying a PS4 just to.
But we were enjoying it so much that, like, I was hooked in the reward system. You know, random drops, this, that, and the other. I was like, this is like gambling for gamers. I was like, this is amazing. I love it.
I will admit, I said this to Steve only recently. I says Destiny was actually, as much as addictive it was driving me mad because you were playing it all the time. It took over your life. But at the same time, I saved so much money just from playing that game because I was not buying any other games or crap at the time because I was only playing Destiny. I saved so much because I just wasn't buying games. You know, so
that's it. So you take from that, Steve-O, that he owes us money. We saved money.
Well, I spent it all later on other stuff, so I don't have it anymore. But that's why I'm broke again. Yeah.
No, but like that's a perfect example of a game that I didn't even research that game. No. Didn't even research it one bit.
Yeah.
Hadn't a clue about it, and then suddenly it appeared on the PlayStation Store as a pre-order. And I was like, "What is this?" Discovered it was from Bungie, and that's Halo. I thought, oh, it's an old Xbox. Development team, and not for me. I looked at Halo. I didn't think Halo appealed to me visually, but when I looked at the actual stills of Destiny, I was like, holy shit, like, look at this. This is like going from planet to planet. And I'll never forget, like, playing the game, right? I was a little bit bored playing it because obviously I started the campaign following those missions, and then, as I said, Steve-O was playing it, and the two of us grouped up and we started playing it, and you unlock the moon, then you unlock this, and you unlock Venus, and so forth. And I was completely blown away by that game.
Yeah, it just had a way of drawing in.
Yeah, and I thought Destiny 1's formula was perfect. And then, you had Destiny 2, or even the later stages of Destiny 1, they added more stuff in there. And I thought in terms of co-op game, I don't think I've experienced camaraderie like that before in a co-op game. Not even Call of Duty could bring that about. Like, we were planning our week.
Yeah.
Monday this, Tuesday the reset, wasn't it? Am I right in saying
Tuesday was reset.
Yeah. And you'd start planning your week ahead then. Yeah. Wednesday doing this, Thursday a raid, Friday, they were great times. I have to say, like, Destiny 1 on PlayStation 4, the group, that time, that year or whatever it was, took me back, right? That's the one game that took me back to when we were kids. Sitting in your room, playing games non-stop. Like those Premier Manager 98s, XCOM, Team Hospital, International Rocket. It took me right back to that. I thought that was amazing.
I agreed. That's actually probably the closest that we could possibly think in the modern era that came close to that, because nobody really sits down in a living room with groups anymore and plays games. It's not really a thing anymore.
But it's not even that. It's what came with it. Yeah. The YouTube videos. Yeah. The Looking for Guardians website. Yeah. All that stuff. And then we expanded our group to other people. And we started raiding, and I was like, holy shit, look at us pro gamers raiding.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Like, I'll admit, like, because even recently, the game does have, even with the Destiny 2, but again, it just has a way of drawing you in every so often. Just when you think you've left it, like, I haven't played Destiny up until recently. Steve-O, of course, again, got me back into it again, and I've been playing it the last couple of weeks, and I've been starting to enjoy it because I've been, when you start to see progression, you're like, oh, this is actually kind of fun, and things make sense. Some things just that didn't click before, you can do it now because you can get through things a lot easier because you've a bit more power, and you're like, oh, this is actually a lot. You're enjoying a lot more because not everything isn't super difficult like it was before, so you can enjoy it a little bit easier. But yeah, I definitely agree. It's just it does have that way of drawing you back in every so often. It really does.
It does. Yeah. As I said, it brought me back to a time where, virtually we were all shoulder to shoulder playing that game. Whereas, in the past you could have been doing that. It took me back to that era. before we were all like grown up and
Yeah.
separate houses and all that kind of stuff. I just thought Destiny 1 was incredible.
Yeah, it really
I think
was.
I think Destiny 1 for me is in that list of games like Mortal Kombat, like Resident Evil,
Yeah.
Red Dead Redemption, Grand Theft Auto. They all just, they
Yeah.
were the games that blew your mind.
It took over. It took over your life, basically. It really did. Like,
Well, it's not, yeah, well, it took over in a good way.
yeah.
No, I did get exhausted.
It did.
You know?
It did. After a
It
while,
took over, but it took over in a way that you were actually, when you were playing it each time, you were enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be a different story, say, if you weren't enjoying it, well then...
Yeah. Do you remember, what was the final raid in Destiny 1? You had the Zamboni and putting the parts into the Zamboni.
Oh.
The rattling machine.
Yeah.
Yes, I still, to this day, I've never completed it because you remember we had the same crew all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And it was so frustrating because you had the people who were the real fighters and you had the people who were the tag-alongs.
Yeah.
And, it was fun, you know what I mean? It didn't matter about who was who.
If you let's just put it this way, like it used to always come down to a point where if we'd all get wiped out and it was left to the guy that was only tagging along, you were screwed. You were always screwed. You were always screwed because he was never going to be able to make it work because he hadn't a clue what he was doing. He was just kind of waiting and letting everybody else do all the work.
You know what, right here, the funny bits of some of the stuff that we used to do, right? So one of them was, do you remember the raid, the Crota raid?
Yeah.
And you had to gather the sword to attack Crota. I remember one of these tag-alongs was he forgot to pick up the sword and he went over to Crota and tried to hit him with his own sword. And it didn't work.
I wouldn't mind this, and this is a fella that's been playing the game for months.
I know. We won't name any names.
No.
But
But there was a lot of fun. There was a lot of frustrating moments, but there was a lot of really like moments where you'd be
there was a
pissing
few
yourself
bits
laughing.
where you're just like, this is enough. I need to go to bed. And then the final nail in the coffin for me was we're in Wrath of the Machine, and we're a pretty good team at this stage. And it came to the Zamboni, and you know about that bit in the Zamboni.
Yeah.
It's quite tough, but you had to then put the parts into the Zamboni. And it had to be specific. It had to be this shape into that part, and the same person kept putting the wrong fucking part into one of the. Everybody else was right, but he was wrong with his part, and it took 15 to 20 goes for us. And I just said, "I'm done, lads. I'm done," and I deleted the game after that. I was so tick at the time. I was like, "No, I'm done. I can't." I was mentally exhausted. I said, "I'm done."
The best story for
I gave
me
up
on that was Steve-O's eldest son. He was only 4 at the time, and he'd been watching the game since he was 3. And one of the first games he really picked up and played was Destiny. He'd seen him playing other games, but Destiny was the one he really got into. But he was observing everything because Steve-O always kept dying at different parts, especially when we were in the glass raid and the jumping puzzle.
So he's jumping.
The wee fella did it on his first go, on his first try, and didn't die because everybody was like, "Steve-O, you've been practicing?" And Steve-O was kind of like, yeah, I've been practicing, I'm getting better. He's like, that's the first. He says, you're actually just the first time you've never died on it. Little did they know it wasn't Steve-O that was playing it was his 4-year-old son. 4 years of age. And we ended up blitzing through that raid and actually had the best run, flawless run that we've ever had. And all because my nephew literally just kicked ass. He was better than everybody else in the bloody game. And then that's to say I always laugh at this because at the end of it we're like, how is this so good? Steve, you never messed up once, you never did this, and then of course Steve-O was like and then eventually he's like, lads, I've a confession to make, I have something to tell you. And they're like, what? And it wasn't me that was playing the game. And I'm like, well, if it wasn't you, then who the heck was playing the game? And so of course I just started into, you were there, Dig, as well. And I just start into a fit of laughing. And she's like, what the hell's he laughing at? And he says, you're going to find out. And of course, then who was playing it then? And Steve was like, oh, me wee fella. And they're like, huh? And then one of the boys asks, what age is he? And like, he's 4. And they're like, and I'm not going to swear, but I'm just going to say feck off, you know. And then they're just like, and then they turn around and they ask me, he says, Peter, was it his wee fella playing? I said, yeah. I stopped laughing long enough to say, yeah, it is. And I says, I'm kidding you not, he's better at the game than I am. And they're kind of in silence. And then it was just like, they wouldn't speak to each other. I actually remember one of the fellas actually got that thick he logged off. He was that embarrassed. A 4-year-old was beating everybody that was in their 30s and 40s. Like, he wiped the floor with everybody. It was hilarious.
What you were saying there, Diggs, which is the same as like myself. See, when Destiny came out, I knew nothing about it. I was never into sci-fi games. I had no intention of getting it. It was just a fella from work gave me a code to download the demo.
Yeah.
And that's how I started. And then when I played it, like, no.
I think I played the demo as well.
You probably did. Just when I've seen that you could upgrade your character and upgrade your weapons in games like that, I love all that.
Yeah.
And that's what did it for me. And I was like, oh, nice. I just fell in love with it. 10 years later, I'm still playing it.
Oh yeah, I still jump into it from time to time. I was playing it again the last couple of weeks and I was enjoying it again. I was just thinking there, Steve, just with yourself there, because even just going back a little bit, though I know it's changing the subject slightly, but there was one other console that we never got to really touch on that you did own, that you bought later.
I was actually going to want to touch on two consoles I still want to quickly touch on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, starting off with one Xbox.
Oh yeah, see, this is what I associate with you, Steve-O. You've always kind of gone out and gotten, you know, the least trending, not the least trending, but, you know, you haven't followed the trend of going with this console. Yeah.
I was always willing to give them a go, you know, that kind of way. And I wanted to see, and because I said to myself, they're released, and I said there has to be some decent games out for them. You know what I mean? And right, the Xbox that I had, I didn't get many games for it, but the games that I got, you will remember them. Well, a couple of them anyway.
Yeah.
It's a Dino Crisis 3.
Oh yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
Silent Hill 4, The Room.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
That was the first time I ever played that game as well. Yeah.
There was another one called Siberia. I don't know if you'd know it. There was Shenmue 2, The Godfather, and things. You'll remember this one. I think it was myself and yourself watched this. The video. It was I'll go back years ago. I think it was on Channel 4 or something. I think we recorded myself watching it. The Thing.
Oh yeah, the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. I had the game for that on it as well.
The Project Zero, the horror game, was really cool as well.
Oh, the Project Zero, yeah. Forgot about that one. We were walking around with the camera.
Yeah. With the ghosts and stuff like that in the haunted Japanese house. That's one scary game.
That was freaky.
Is that no? What was that called? Sorry.
Project Zero. It's actually known as Fatal Frame in the US.
Yes, that's what I can remember it. Who's the developer of that game? That wasn't Capcom, was it? No,
is it Tecmo or something like that?
Oh jeez, I don't know.
Yeah, probably. I never really got into those games, and even, you know, some of those. What was those other survival horror games on the PlayStation?
Forbidden
3?
Siren.
Yes.
It was on the PS2 and PS3.
I couldn't play them games.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind. They were developed by the same fella that made Silent Hill, but the controls are very clunky.
Yeah, and it was very dark, and it just didn't work for me, which is a pity. But no, going back to the Xbox, Devo, like it's kind of off topic, but I was never attracted to Xbox ever.
No,
I didn't.
Wasn't either.
Yeah. It's the name for me, and I remember the original Xbox. It was black with the big kind of X in the middle and the green light.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, that's it.
It just didn't muck. And then, no, I will admit that the Xbox 360 was like one of the best consoles of all time, but I know it had that red ring of death thing. But, you know, in terms of multiplayer gaming, it really was. It blew PlayStation out of the water.
Yeah, it did.
And it gave Sony the kick up the hole that they really needed. You know, but Yeah, no, you have to appreciate the Xbox, well, the Xbox 360 console, but yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely. I know I've had an Xbox 360. Peter, you've had one.
I still have my old one here. I haven't played it in years, to be honest.
Yeah, I had one, but I
Yeah.
think I ended up like trading it in.
Because I think, to be honest, for me at the minute, because I don't have time really to sit down and play a lot of old games, so I actually am in the process of trying to sell some stuff because I just need the money. So I actually am trying to get rid of a load of old stuff. So a lot of that stuff will be going over the next while if
Yeah,
I can help it. Just things change, time to move on from stuff. I think
Yeah.
you know.
There's another one, the Nintendo Wii. That was another
Oh.
console that I got.
yeah, me too.
Like, it's some really good games. It really did. And
Visually crap,
yeah,
but
visually crap, but
gameplay
wise,
wise,
fun
yeah,
that you can
yeah,
play together. Very good. Like going back, like, because you're a big fan of Resident Evil, I think I bought Resident Evil in every console that I've got.
yeah.
Like, I had Resident Evil 4, I had Resident Evil 0, I had the Dark Side Chronicles, I had the Umbrella Chronicles.
Yeah.
You know, just no matter what console it was Resident Evil, I had to get it. You know,
Yeah.
it's just Resident Evil. Couldn't do
Yeah.
without it.
And you know, for me personally, I got the Wii out of chance. It was I bought into the hype about it. I have to admit, and I put my name down at the local GameStop store, and it says, "Oh yeah. Look, if you happen to get one in stock, yeah, there's my name." And I got a phone call, like, and I was like, "Yeah, we got a Wii in stock here for you. You want it?" And I was like, "Hell yeah!" And I got it. And like, it was groundbreaking, not visually, but the idea of the motion controls was
Controllers,
amazing.
yeah, at the time. That's what I fell in love with. It was completely
Yeah.
different from what we were used to.
I love the even remember, was it a demo you got with the console,
Yeah.
and you had the bowling and
Wii
golf
Sport.
and all that.
Baseball,
Wii Sports.
and the golf was brilliant,
Mm.
and the baseball.
There were some
It was
good
tennis
games.
as well.
Mm. Yeah,
It was
tennis was
all
good.
family
Yeah.
orientated, but it was still good. Like, even Mario Kart on it. And like, games that I had on as well, like a PDC World Darts Championship. I had another one then because I loved darts and the horse race. I had another one, G1 Jockey. I bought The Godfather. There was actually a different version of it. And then Scarface, because I'm a huge fan of Scarface.
Yeah, I remember you did playing that last year. Did you and one of the boys? Did
Manhunt, Alone in the Dark, House of the Dead. You know what I mean?
Oh, that one had the two games on it, House of Dead 2 and 3, didn't it?
And then there was another one, Overkill, as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I remember Overkill.
So there's still plenty. I bought probably, apart from obviously PlayStation, I probably bought more games, say, for the Wii and the Dreamcast than I did for, say, the Xbox or the N64.
Yeah,
I look back.
I'd agree. Yeah, N64. Do you know what? I think the biggest disappointment with the N64 was the stuck with cartridge,
Yeah.
and it just didn't work right. Like, don't get me wrong, GoldenEye was amazing. I had Turok, Dinosaur Hunter.
Yeah, there's still some brilliant games in that console, though. In fairness, there really is, even though there isn't as many compared to others.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I wasn't a fan. Yeah, go ahead.
I said, like, going back to the SNES, you had Mario Kart, and then on the Wii you had Mario Kart Wii, and then, say, going back to the N64, you had Mario Kart 64. But I didn't like Mario Kart 64. I just couldn't take to it. Like, as you said there, maybe it was an element of the cartridge, and you didn't like.
But I remember
Just didn't do it for me.
you didn't have Mario Kart 64 on the actual N64 console itself. I remember you bought it on the Wii online shop. See, you did.
Was it? Did I not have it on the N64?
No.
I did on the N64.
No. You bought it on the Wii, and we used to play it before you got Mario Kart 64. Because actually, the funny thing is, you get a few of the lads around, and it was good crack playing it with your mates. Even though, right, you said you didn't enjoy it, but it was good crack when you were playing with everybody together. But then once you got Mario Kart Wii, then you moved on to that then instead, and that was brilliant. That was very, very good.
It was just going like Mario Kart. It was either the Wii or the SNES version. That was it. Any other version, no, forget about it. It was just like the Wii. It was just more good games, but it was all family oriented. As you said, things was the truth. Graphically, there was nothing to look at, but it was still a fun console, as you said, with the motion controllers. It was groundbreaking at the time, like what they'd done, and it just enticed everybody to buy one.
Yeah, it was innovative. I thought the whole it was something different. They kind of said, okay, we're not going to focus on visuals. we're going to focus on the gameplay mechanics,
Yeah.
which was cool, whatnot, but it just didn't work for me. And I have to admit, I was a little bit disappointed because, in the 16-bit era, Mega Drive and SNES, I was very much leaning towards SNES, Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And then, the N64 came out. They were like, no, we're going to stick with cartridge. And I was like, oh, okay, right. Compared to PS1, this sucks. And then the Wii came out, and you were like, okay, I'll give them another go. Gameplay wise, yes, phenomenal. Wii Sports was great. Some of the games were great. Resident Evil 4, the old school Resident Evil 4, that's the best version of that game, without a doubt.
Oh yeah, 100% agree. Brilliant.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I totally enjoyed that.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. So, am I right in saying, right, so N64 and then you came to not Dreamcast, GameCube, wasn't it?
Smith threw it to GameCube.
Yeah,
it's GameCube.
The N64, GameCube, and then the Wii. Yeah, because I bought a GameCube just to play the Resident Evil remake.
Didn't we all?
and you did as well, yeah.
I think me going back to the Wii and the Xbox or whatever Resident Evil, sorry, not Xbox, Dreamcast, it was solely because I knew Resident Evil was coming out and buying it. It's mad to think I'm buying a console just for one game.
Yeah. That's how bad we were.
But what a game! But the two games we did buy consoles for, like they were they were the best games around at that time, and they were the most hyped games of their generation, pretty much,
Yeah.
The majority of say the Xbox ones, say that I didn't buy many of, and same with the Wii. They were just completely off the cuff. Most of them I didn't know anything about them. I wanted to have something to play. You know what I mean? I was just more or less when I went to buy them and looked at them going, that looks alright, I'll give that a go. Because tell you the truth, the Wii games actually weren't that deal back in the day. So they were affordable.
Yeah.
So that's why I liked it as well.
You know what I was just thinking about there? The way I said, like, it took me a while to get into the PS2? I think the reason, if I remember correctly, I didn't get into the PS2 because of the GameCube. They were around the same era, right?
The GameCube came out a little bit later than the PS2.
Yes. Yeah. But I had that.
Yeah, even though the GameCube, I know it's smaller discs, but it was more powerful visually than the PS2.
Yeah, because I remember being in America for the first time in 2002 and being in, what's that big famous toy store in New York? I'm trying to remember. I can't think of what it's called.
Not Toys R Us or anything like that, no.
Yes, Toys R Us.
Yeah.
So I was in Toys R Us, right? And I'm not kidding you, I had this dilemma. I'm in Toys R Us, and on the wall in front of me is Dreamcast games. And they're the American version of them. And they're out before the European version. So I know back home these games are not out. And I had Resident Evil 0 and Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance in front of me. And I was, so talk about it, one of the two biggest franchises that I've loved. And I have to admit, I'm ashamed to admit that I picked Deadly Alliance, Mortal Kombat, over Resident Evil 0. And I remember I came back home, I knew that this wouldn't work in my GameCube, and I bought the, do you remember that, what was that called? Not Game Shock, it was called something.
Oh, it was an adapter thing that you plugged into it, wasn't it?
Like a card or something.
Yeah.
It was a little disc, and you put the disc in, and it would allow you to open the top loader disc.
Yeah.
And you take that out and you put in your American version.
Actually, I do remember you actually getting something like that. Yeah, that allowed you to play the game. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I bought Mortal Kombat because it looked amazing. Like the GameCube looked amazing.
Yeah, it did.
Anyway, yeah, and it was just amazing, and I can't believe I picked that over Resident Evil 0. I thought Resident Evil was my, main love.
The be all and end all, that was it, nothing.
Because I remember you had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 on it, and I remember I bought another game. Yeah, and I remember I bought another game was Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, and that was a really cool game. That game really messed up with your mind because it was a lot of psychological stuff. That game's going for crazy money. It's one of the most expensive games now that you can find.
That's ridiculous. One of the best games I've ever played.
Yeah,
and it was like a 3D version of Resident Evil.
Yeah,
where you had your sort of static camera angles, but the whole environment was 3D.
It was all psychological because it really messed up with you. Because there's points in the game where it looked like things had come up saying that your save had been corrupted, but it hadn't been. The game was always constantly
that's
messing
cool.
with you. Yeah.
That reminds me of Metal Gear 1.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
changing the controller into the second
Yeah.
port so that Psycho
Yeah.
Mantis couldn't read your
That's
mind.
right, yeah, I remember that.
That's
Yeah.
such a basic thing that's so cool.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Some really cool
Yeah.
ideas in that.
That Eternal Darkness is a great game.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure they had a sequel, but amazing game,
No.
I have to admit.
They said it's actually one of the few games that actually was born and still lives on the GameCube. It never was brought out on anything else.
Yeah. It's a pity. Sometimes like games like that just don't do well.
Yeah.
It's a pity.
Yeah.
Like,
But,
just going back like the Dreamcast and that, you're going the console was there, brilliant console. It just for some reason it just didn't take off. It had so much potential, and it's sad to see the likes of that. It just didn't take off. You know what I mean?
The first online, right?
Yeah, I think it was it?
Yeah, I think it was the first console to really go online. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I remember like
Yeah, us trying to look. Us trying to use the dial-up
Dial-up
and trying to look at sites we shouldn't have been looking at.
Yeah. Page 3, girls.
Yeah, I don't think we ever got
20 minutes for the image. 20 minutes for the JPEG to load.
Yeah. That's
all.
ridiculous.
All you do is look at my room.
Page
3 all over.
I know, yeah. But it was the novelty, wasn't it? Searching online. Dreamcast,
exactly, yes.
Yeah, it's a pity. It was such a good. It had such a good kind of like. It was a good idea.
Yeah.
It had the power, and it was innovative, but it just somehow it just didn't work. I think PlayStation just. I don't know. It worked with everyone, and it trumped everything else.
Yeah.
That came along.
It made no difference, like as you say, what console came out, whether it be more powerful. Everyone was still PlayStation.
I think it had because it fed into the trends that were ongoing at the time. When you look at games like Wipeout, it fed into the clubbing scene. It just managed to blend into everything, into culture.
It's marketing.
Yeah,
the marketing was the big key factor.
Oh, it really was. Yeah, because it blended into everything that was happening around that time.
But they had such a cool name, PlayStation.
Yeah.
It just. Yeah, it does. It's so easy to say. I know Dreamcast is easy to say, GameCube is easy to say, but it just had a great name and the symbols and all that just worked so well.
In saying that, though, like I will admit, I know we never really played the Sega Saturn as you touched on earlier, but I will admit, because it was the one console that I never really played, especially of that generation. So I ended up, like I think I said it before, I did go out and I bought one. About, Jesus, it's over 10 years ago. And I managed to pick up a load of games, and this is before prices started to skyrocket. But I have to admit, there's the Sega Saturn, in fairness to it, right, it may not have the vast catalogue the PlayStation has, but it does have some really cool games on it. I absolutely love Sega Rally. Sega Rally is phenomenal on the Saturn. So it is. It's such a good game and a really good port of the arcade original. But then I've other games there, like I've the Saturn version of Duke Nukem, although I did prefer the PlayStation version. Graphically it wouldn't be as good on the Saturn, but the Saturn has some solid games. Daytona USA, I have a couple of I think RPG games, and I have like the Resident Evil equivalent on it now. I did pay good money for that, but again, the price have skyrocketed since it was a Deep Feel. And yeah, and it's a really good game as well. I've never actually really got round to sitting down properly with it and finishing it, and I do intend to someday. But I did get a bit into it, and it's a really good game, very very good alternative to Resident Evil for sure. It's actually it's a very underrated console. It deserves a lot more, I think, and especially from now having owned one and playing it, there's a lot of really cool games on it. Really really cool games.
That's kind of a pity that it's the time has come and gone.
Yeah. It is. Look, it is what it is. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But you never know what happens in the future.
Yeah.
At the minute. It's interesting because you look at if you read the articles about Xbox these days, it sounds like Xbox is going to move away from consoles, and they're just going to focus on the game
all digital
side
kind of thing.
Yeah, but anyway,
we'll see.
hopefully the end of consoles is not too near, because I just love the idea of sitting down with a console and. That's the nostalgic kind of. It keeps to that nostalgia, I think, as well.
Yeah, keeps us going.
Yeah.
But in terms of, game purchasing, and I know I haven't. I have to admit, the last year or so, I've bought into hyperbolic games. I bought Elden Ring, and that hasn't disappointed me. That's amazing, and I would recommend that to anyone and everyone who's into video games these days. It's just incredible. I bought the latest. I've said many times on this podcast or this on past podcasts that about Mortal Kombat. That was one of the first games that I became addicted to. I bought Mortal Kombat 11 recently, and I thought the game had its day because I thought, well, it's just a beat 'em up, say 1v1 type thing. It's actually incredible, and I've been playing Mortal Kombat. It's the ultimate Mortal Kombat 11 I've been playing, and just going back over it, and they've brought it into modern day, and the crypt, walking around the crypt, finding hidden items and things like that. It's just incredible. I love it, and
I'd like the sound of that.
yeah, it's amazing, and I've mentioned to you guys off the podcast that it takes me back to Mortal Kombat Deception, where you play the Conquest mode.
Yeah, that was.
It's
really
very
good.
much like that, and RPG elements, and I really, really think that Warner Brothers games should really think about making a Mortal Kombat game that's not your traditional beat 'em up type game, but an RPG type game.
Yeah.
I really think they should consider that. They've got the lore, they've got the characters. There's so many characters to pick from. Hint, hint. I would say Scorpion, please.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, they've got the options there to develop a game that is just RPG focused around all the worlds, NetherRealm, Outworld. They've got it all there. It's just
That's have it all, yeah.
yeah. So make the bloody game. I want to play it. But as I said, yeah, just we're talking right now in this moment in time. Resident Evil 4 remake. That's a remake. We knew it was going to be good. If they just stuck to the original source, it was always going to be good. Just modernise it a little bit, like controls
Yeah.
wise.
That was it. It's always going to be a winner.
Upgrade the visuals. Yeah, it's simple. I'm trying to think what else I played recently. I'll have to look at my games list. But what about you guys? Is there anything recently that's kind of blown you away, or are you kind of still stuck with the same old games?
The only one that says it has, but obviously it entails the VR too. And that's playing, say, Resident Evil 4 in VR and Village of VR. And I tell you
Oh
what,
yeah.
it's brilliant. It really
Yeah.
is. It is brilliant.
Yeah. It does
Would
look
you
very
say? Would you say it's kind of like that's had the same impact as playing the Wii for the first time?
I would say definitely.
Giving you something different?
The excitement and the buzz. It just when I started playing, I couldn't leave it. You know, that kind of way. I wanted to play it the whole time. It's just like as soon as I'm finished work or as soon as I'm finished dinner.
Yeah,
or
you're
as soon as
thinking
I
about
finish
it.
something,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of it. I need to get back playing it. You know, that kind of way.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning. I have to go. And a couple of times I had get up early just before I go to work. Just have a sneaky fucking game for a half an hour before I go.
I know.
You what I mean?
See, yeah, I miss that. I miss that element where you can just cram in a wee game there just to get something.
Yeah.
Destiny was the last game for me that did that. I saw myself getting up early, knowing that I was starting work at a certain time, and say, "Oh, I'll crack in this wee strike here just in case."
Exactly. I did it with Destiny and same like with Resident Evil now, the VRs. When it grabs you, it grabs you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's a lovely feeling, isn't it?
Yeah,
That the game,
it sure is.
yeah, it gives you that kind of satisfaction that yes, money well spent.
Exactly.
Yeah. What about you, Peter?
Yeah, it's
Master System.
to be honest. I'll be honest. Like at the minute, I ain't playing so much modern games anymore. Like
Yeah.
I've gone back to play a few bits and pieces here and there, but it's just I'm spending more of my time playing the older games now. And then obviously because I've so many bloody channels and I've different projects on the go that my time's kind of varied. So if I'm playing one, I will admit now there's a few games I played there over the last while that I found myself actually getting really into them. Some games actually they're not considered great, but they were like budget games that were released on like on even the PS2. There was one in particular. It was kind of like it felt like a bit like a mixture of like oh, there was a game that we had, a budget game on the PS2. I remember buying for one of the boys for Christmas one year, and it was you were driving on the highway of Tokyo and you had to try and capture like different type of it was called like a supercar race or something like that, or supercar challenge, but it wasn't actually even supercars. All it was is you were trying to get from point A, you were trying to get from one point of Tokyo down to another part of Japan on motorways. That's all you were driving on for like 4 hours. It got a bit very repetitive very quickly. But I played another game that was similar to it, that was obviously used the same graphics engine, but it was more of a Mad Max style. where there was someone that was dying of a virus, and you needed to fight. You needed to get the antidote. So once you got it, you needed to drive, like, say, through like a series of levels where you'd stop off at a different point where you could upgrade your car and your armor and stuff and weapons that you could use to fight off against different type of bikes and other vehicles that were trying to take you off the road. But then at different points you'd have like bosses. Now the cameras and the controls, in fairness, were terrible. Like it was like, it's a budget game, it's poorly put together. But the funny thing is, I sat down and played, and originally I found it by chance. It was part of, like, in Japan they had like it was called the Simple Series, like the 2000. They did similar on the PS1. It was like Simple Series 1500 or something, and that was for like more like cheap budget games. And I ended up played for the space of like 2 to 3 days. I was playing it for an hour here, an hour there, an hour, and it was one of those games I found that when I started and got into it, I kept playing it. I wanted to go back and play it, even though I never intended to do it, because I was originally wanting to create a bit for recording a video. But I find sometimes a game, even if it's not that great, but it has something about it that just I get intrigued by it. I'm like, oh, I like this, and I'll try and finish it. So that was one of those games. That was about 3 months ago. I was playing that, and I don't know why, but I actually enjoyed it. You know, even though it was kind of the same thing over and over again, but it just drew me in for whatever reason. So I actually stuck with it until I finished it. And but yeah, I'm playing a lot more older games now. But then at the same time, when they're old in terms of how long they're out there, but they're new to me because a lot of these games I've never played before. I've never heard anything about them. So for me, the experience is brand new. You know. And I think that's what's even more appealing, because it proves that these older consoles still have a lot going for them, and there's still a lot of surprises in store. There's so many games on them that we never played, and I'm getting to experience them, which is really, really cool. So it's bringing about a whole new wave of nostalgia in a way. Like like for me, like we've been talking about in this episode, it's bringing me back to those days when you got to experience something for the first time, because you're finding a game online, and you're like, oh, that looks interesting. So what you do is, obviously, I went through like the process I said earlier, where you're going through the research phase, and then you eventually go down and sit down and play it. Right? I'm going to sit down and play a record a bit so that I can use for a video or a documentary video or something I'm working on. But then you find yourself, oh, this is actually really good. I like this. There's a good story to it, and the gameplay mechanics are fairly decent. They're a lot better than what you would think they'd be. And then you're like, before you know it, you're halfway through the game and nearly finished it, and you're like, geez, I didn't see that coming. You know, that kind of way. You know, because you got so into it. And I found that over the last couple of months with some of those older games that I'd never played before. And you're just sitting down and you're really getting into them. So, like, there's a lot can be said for that. Like, new or old games, it doesn't matter. If you find something you enjoy, and again, it comes back to just finding stuff randomly, that's what's been happening to me over the last while. And it is bringing all that back. And you're getting just as much of enjoyment out of it now as you would have, say, years ago. Which is crazy, you know? Well worth doing.
Yeah, like, I have to admit, I played a game last year called Tormented Souls, which is kind of like it's based on the old school like format of Resident Evil with static camera angles.
That's an indie horror game, isn't it? Yeah,
it's an indie horror game, and I took a chance. I said, you know what, let's give this a go. And this is in the midst of Resident Evil 2 remake, Resident Evil 3 remake. I played it, and you know what, I was not disappointed. Now, budget wise and polish wise, it's not up there with those Resident Evil games, but gameplay and enjoyment, it definitely is. And I think the puzzles in that game, they're quite difficult. I would put them even higher above Resident Evil 1 puzzles.
I find a lot of those indie horror games, the puzzles are some of them are ridiculous.
It went back to the Resident Evil 1 formula and kind of modernized it a little bit, and it proved to me that it's possible that, you know, Resident Evil could be brought into the modern day setting with the old static camera angles and things like that.
Very easy.
And it was very good. I have to admit, I thought it was amazing, and I thought that, you know what, it cost me, I think I got it on sale for like €8 or €10.
There is a sequel to that game coming out. So
I saw that it was announced a couple of months ago or something. Yeah. And I'm definitely going to be buying that game. So there's, as you said, like, there's still life in the old kind of formats.
Oh, there is.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's really, it's like, even at that, like, I think of games like Dead Cells and Hades they're amazing games.
You like the old Castlevania style games as well, isn't it? Kind of like those.
Like, I suck at them, but like, I just like playing them.
Yeah.
You know, growing up when we were kids, Dracula was a big thing. Vampires and stuff like that. If you remember the Blade movies and stuff, they were amazing.
Yeah, they were cool.
And I just growing up with that, you kind of like you enjoy those games, and I have to admit, like Castlevania, even though like I've played a few of them because you can get them now in the PlayStation Store quite cheap. They're always an offer. I've played them, I've enjoyed them, but some of them are quite difficult, and I just don't have the same patience I had when I was a kid.
I know the feeling.
Just to keep persevering and doing them. But you know what? I still think they're not very deal. I would definitely recommend them to anyone who wants to play them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so I think that wraps up another episode, guys. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think we've covered basically everything.
Yeah, I think for me, it's visuals, genre, and whatnot. I think we've established it's very similar to you, Steve-O, and Peter. It's like easy platinum trophies. How are you?
No.
I've had me day. I've had me fun.
There's no such thing as a bad game in Sweet Eyes.
No.
Yeah, but that's it. I always look at Peter there and I say, this dude is a proper gaming fan. It doesn't matter. The game, we could look at the game and say, this game is terrible, I hate it, but he'll always see something good in it.
Well, yeah, I genuinely, when it comes to games, I always like to see the positives. I can see things that people wouldn't see, and I find, that's the funny thing, that's what some of the best games I've ever played, I've actually found that. Games that people would hate, but I've always found them to be enjoyable to some degree, because there's always something in them that I genuinely like.
Yeah, you find something you like.
And I always put that back to my time I spent in college, when I actually done my qualification, and I did video game design for a year, and I loved that whole aspect because I loved the process, and I got to see behind the scenes of what it really takes. Now, in saying that, there's different qualities of games out there, some good and some bad, and obviously the finished product is never what you'd expect, but I got to a point by doing that course, I learned to respect the process. Like there's a lot of love and effort that goes into a lot of that stuff, whether they're good or not. There's a lot of blood, sweat and tears that goes into it. So the way I see it is I like to respect it for what it is, because there's always something positive to come out of it. Even if a game is bad, there's always something there that you can pick from it.
Yeah, that's true. You see games now in the media getting slated, and you say yourself, piss off, like somebody's worked hard on that. And it may not have been their total decision on to do certain elements of the game, but some clown up in a boardroom is like, no, you got to change this.
A lot of times with which we all know, and it's a well-known fact that even with big branded names that do reviews and stuff, a lot of the people that have been reviewing games over the years actually don't play video games themselves, so they don't really understand. They just paid to write articles, so they don't really understand what they're writing. Anyway,
it's pretty bad, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you get a gamer to review a game. That way, you get the honest opinion.
Yeah, that's how I follow a lot of YouTubers that they kind of give their honest opinion on games. I get a lot more from that.
I find that with stuff that I do, just before we finish up, that's one thing I suppose in my own way I can take it away as a positive, because a lot of people do often comment, say you're one of the very few people out there that actually doesn't completely stay the game. You actually will point out the bad bits, but you see it for what it is. But you are one of the few that gives it a chance, and you actually point out the bits that you like, and you actually can do it in a way that is positive, that presents it in a way that looks better, if you know what I mean. That's that's good to know. At least I'm doing something right.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah. All right, so let's wrap it up, guys. Thanks for everyone who's tuned in to listen to this episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Yet another little nostalgic trip with us. If you like what you heard, you can find us on most podcast platforms. We are also on YouTube, all under the name Casual Gamers Project. So if you please consider subscribing, leaving a review or a comment, and maybe sharing this with your mates. It would greatly help us to get out there. So thank you very much. We are the Casual Gamers Project. Thanks for listening, and until next time.